and California, Midwest, and the Washington, D.C. area. In addition, we have one chapter in China. Around the globe, we have over 6,000 members. And the next slide, please. So in SAPA-DC, we organize a lot of activities like this one today. I will not go into details, but next slide, please. Our members actually are very achieved a lot in the industry, and they have published and have been sharing their insights on various media. Next slide, please. And SAPA-DC in particular aims to achieve several goals and try to be valuable to our community in a few areas, especially the 5 areas I listed below. On top of everything, we want to actually promote the career development of the professionals in our community, in the Washington, D.C., Maryland, and Northern Virginia area. So how do we do that? We take advantage of all the resources I mentioned below. The area is the science hub. We have leading pharmaceutical and biotech companies in the area. We have the best research institute around the globe. And I will just not list the full, repeat the full name, list of names you can see and you know who they are. And investments, we have large numbers of experts and entrepreneurs in our network, especially in the Washington, D.C. area. NEA, for example, is a world-known leading venture capital PE across the board investments firm. And we have a lot of resources here. FDA is next door. I'm not saying we have special channel to them, but it's close. So we have a lot of members and experts who are close to our organization, and their goal is also to promote healthcare and biotech. So we share the same goal. We do things together, and we have a lot of resources in the legal aspects of the biotech pharmaceutical industry. For example, we have numerous top law firms in the DC area, and many attorneys are actually our SAPA-DC volunteers or members. So next slide, please. I will not go through the program, but I just encourage you to look into them by yourself because it's already shared in the link and in your emails. Next slide, please. And I want to acknowledge all of those people. Except for me, actually, all the other names you really need to pay attention to because they spend all the time to put this together. In fact, since this is a career development event, I want to emphasize that if someone can do their job well and can do events like this, these people definitely already stands out. So if you are a employer, I highly encourage you to contact these people to maybe have them become your colleagues in the future. Of course, all the members in SAPA-DC, all the friends, this is a big community. We encourage everyone to connect it with each other and help each other to find opportunities. Next slide, please. So I want to thank the sponsors very much for their generous contribution, and also all the speakers, panelists, and media partners, and all the attendees. So far, I see already 100 people joined. We have over 200, I think, about 300 people registered. Let's see how many will join. Next slide. Final word about this, and I will disappear. I highly encourage everyone to get connected with SAPA-DC. So if you are interested and if you happen to use WeChat, we encourage you to scan this QR code and join our group. But also, this QR code is on the program book, so you don't need to hurry. You feel free, and whenever you feel comfortable, scan and join us. A lot of good things are happening within the organization. Thank you all, and I hope everyone enjoy the event. Have a wonderful day. Thank you. Back to you, Rong and James.
Great. Thank you, Vince. We also have a short video just to kind of give people a little bit background on SAPA-DC and this forum. Please enjoy. Hi everyone, my name is Rong. I'm the chair of the SAPA-DC 2021 Career Development Forum. Our forum has a history of 5 years. The first one was in 2016. And this year is the 4th event and also the first virtual event that we have had. And we're very excited to present it to you. The SAPA-DC Career Development Forum has always been a free event and will always stay free. We hope that it provides an opportunity for the talents in the industry to learn about life science and also serves as a platform for the talents in the greater Washington, D.C. area to network with each other and advance their career.
My name is Charles Lee, President-elect of SAPA-DC. Our volunteers has been very excited for this event. Through this event, we want to help our peers, our organization, and the industry at large. By putting this event together, our team of volunteers has gained experience in project development, event planning, fundraising, as well as gained the opportunity of networking. So I hope more people can join us as speakers, sponsors, and volunteers, so we can support each other and grow together. Thank you.
James, over to you.
All right. Yeah, well, as we can see, SAPA has some video talent. I'm very impressed. And I just want to back up and thank Vince as well. He's more than just a handsome guy who's relaxing comfortably in his outdoor setting that I think we're all a little bit jealous of. He's a very caring person and is a wonderful leader. All of us who know him well respect him deeply. So thank you, Vince, for everything you've done for this organization. I'm going to move us now directly into our content by introducing our first speaker, who is Stella Sun, Managing Director of ILS China. And she's going to talk today about the impact, the importance of mindset and beliefs on both our personal and professional development. So Stella, we'd love to hear from you.
Oh, thank you, James. 大家早上好，我是 Stella， 非常荣幸能够有机会参加SAPA-DC 的这样的一个活动。希望我今天和大家分享的关于 growth mindset 的这个话题，可以支持到大家未来的职业发展。我是从事企业的管理咨询工作，已经有超过20年的时间。那主要都是在支持总部位于中国的一些亚太总部位于中国的 MNC， 可能大家比较熟悉的像 Disney 啊、P&G 啊、Nike 啊，都是我们的客户。在 pharmaceutical 和 biotech， 特别是 biotech， 这几年其实在中国是飞速发展，所以我最近发现我们大概有1/3的客户目前都已经转向了 biotech， 所以可见这是一个多么热的一个话题。OK， 那今天我想和大家分享的这个关于 growth mindset， 实际上是一个非常有趣的心理学领域的话题。各位其实都是医学专家，都是一些专业人士。希望我今天的分享也一样可以给到大家一些启发。谢谢。下一页。Stanford University 的教授叫下一页。Carol Dweck。那 Carol Dweck 呢，他经过30年的研究，the next slide, thank you. Carol Dweck 经过30多年的研究，他发现我们每个人都具备2种心智模式。我接下来就不用中文讲心智模式，我就叫它 mindset， 这样大家可能比较容易理解2种 mindset 就是 growth mindset 和 fixed mindset。当我们遇到变化、困难或者挫折的时候呢 ，mindset 就会产生很大的影响。 mindset 其实就是我们每个人在心中戴着的一副眼镜，通过不同的眼镜看待这个世界， mindset 就会对我们在行动、情绪和认知方面产生完全不同的影响。Next slide。在 Carol Dweck 的研究中，最值得我今天最想和大家分享的就是 mindset belief 是可以通过一定的干预来改变的。一旦当我们的 mindset 从 fixed mindset 转向 growth mindset， 我们就会更积极的来看待改变，更快速的适应外界的变化，更好的调整自己的情绪状态。那么尽早的塑造growth mindset 可以对我们的人生，对我们的成功都带来至关重要的影响。Next slide. Thank you. 那么 mindset 究竟是什么？其实在这里已经有非常清晰的定义，不过我还是跟大家稍作解释。Fixed mindset 指的是人们相信自己的智力、个性、才能这些特质相对固定，不太可能有太多的改变。每个人天生具备一定的特质，无法做出多大的改变。特别是因为我支持了非常多的pharmaceutical company， 因为有很多的博士专家，大家其实都是非常聪明的人。那么聪明的人就会相信，如果天生是聪明的就是聪明的，如果是笨的这是不能改变的，对吗？举个例子我有一个表妹，她是在波士顿从业的牙医，她是一个很好的牙医的外科医生，她动手能力非常强，在女生里很少见。那么她和她的父母呢对此的解读就是，因为她的父亲是工程师，所以呢她就遗传了父亲的动手能力。同时呢，他平时讲话的语速比较慢，而且不是很清楚，所以他的家人就认为说他妈妈就是这样的，所以他就遗传了他妈妈的说话方式，这是不可能改变的。这就是 fixed mindset。那 growth mindset 是什么呢？ growth mindset 就相信我们都具有相对的可塑性，我们可以通过学习、努力和挑战，良好的策略和寻求他人的帮助，就可以去对我们的能力有显著的提升。如果现在我们的表现比较糟糕，就说明我们其实还未掌握这项技能，只是 not yet， 并不是我们不可以。所以这就是 growth mindset 和 fixed mindset 的区别。Next slide, thank you. 在过去的5年当中呢，其实心智的研究已经从智力能力的领域呢探索到更广的范围，例如意志力。研究表明说，如果人们相信自己的意志力是有限的资源，比如说我们觉得我们的能量是有限的，我们觉得我们的这个精力是有限的，早晚会耗尽，我们就会限制自己的自控力，同时其实智力水平也会有所降低。科学家们还研究了我们的 personality， 就是我们是哪种人所持有的信念。如果偏向于固定呢，就会影响我们的社交关系。比如说，如果人们相信自己可以改变，自己的个性可以改变，或者他人的个性可以改变，那么建立更好的社交关系的可能性就会增加。而在职场中，越来越多的企业，包括互联网公司，大家可能比较清楚的知道 growth mindset 的应用最成功的案例就是 Microsoft。所以有很多的这个互联网公司，初创型公司，比如我刚刚说的 Biotech，其实包括很多传统企业都是在积极的向自己的员工介绍 growth mindset， 都是希望人们可以通过改变相对对一些事情比较刻板和僵化的看法，转向更加灵活的、更快的可以适应改变。Next slide, thank you. Oh, sorry, wrong. 不是这个 video， 是第一个 video。And I
sets we have 第一个 video 吗？
我们看这个吧，也 OK 了，都可以。我们没有视频版。
Mindset is sort of a lens or frame of mind through which we view the world that sort of orients us to a particular set of associations and expectations. So the idea there is not just that it sort of colors our reality, but that the way that we look at reality changes what we're paying attention to, it changes what we expect, and those associations and expectations change that reality. So the mindset itself is a lens or frame, but the power of mindset comes from not just how that's a reflection of what is, but how that mindset interacts with and shapes the reality as it unfolds. So mindsets exist whether we want them to or not, right? As humans, the amount of information to take in at any given moment is unwieldy. So to try to understand something like the nature of intelligence or the nature of stress or what it means to have diabetes or even something more simple like what it means to take aspirin, understanding what that is and what that means is really impossible actually for us to cognitively understand. But they don't have to, right? So the beautiful thing about mindsets, in my opinion, is that we can consciously, mindfully bring them into our awareness, understand their effects, and then choose to change them, right? Choose to change the way we're viewing stress or intelligence or diabetes. So how do mindsets change our blood pressure or our weight? We're still exploring that. We think that there are a variety of different mechanisms. For this study, we looked at how mindsets operate in diet. And in this study, we had people drinking a milkshake. We brought them into our lab and we had them drink the exact same milkshake at 2 different time points. So this was a 350 calorie milkshake. But we told them at the 2 different time points that it was a very different milkshake. So at one time point, they thought it was 140 calories, very low fat and low sugar milkshake. The other time point, we told them it was this indulgent, rich, high calorie indulgent shake. And we were interested in measuring their gut peptide ghrelin. So they're drinking the exact same shake. They're not moving. They're not changing their behavior. All that's different is what they think the shake is. One time point, they have the mindset that it's indulgent. And the other time point, they have the mindset that it's sensible. And what we found in this study was that that mindset alone changed their physiology. So their bodies, as measured by ghrelin in their bloodstreams, changed such that when they thought they were eating indulgently, their bodies responded as if they had had more calories. In other words, their ghrelin levels dropped at a 3-fold rate, which signals to their brain, I've had a lot of food, you can stop eating, and it speeds up the metabolism. The limits of mindset is, I don't personally believe that the power of mind is limitless. I believe there is a physical reality to what our bodies are capable of. I believe there's a physical reality to the way the universe works. But I don't believe that we know where the limits of mindset are yet. So how far can we push our bodies to heal through just changing our minds? How far can we change our realities through changing our minds? That is what we don't know. And that is what I'd like to see.
Okay, 谢谢荣。
A greater grasp.
Okay, next slide, thank you. Okay, 好的，所以刚刚虽然我们 play 了另外一个 video， 但是其实也是非常有趣也看到了说 mindset 的 change 真的是可以带来很多可能我们现在都不能预测的一些变化。今天在座的各位呢，其实都在思考自己的职业生涯的发展。其实发展就是一种变化，对吗？那么当变化来临的时候，我们都会持有什么样的 mindset 呢？Next slide. OK， 就像这张图中所显示的，其实当人们在面临变化的时候，势必就会面对一些不舒服、一些不适应，比如不一样的人际关系，不同的企业文化，不同的业务形态，不同的生活习惯，不同的语言习惯，不同的思维习惯，对吗？ 我相信大家在职业生涯中经常会遇到一些这样的情况。当我们处于 fixed mindset 的时候，我们就会把变化看成是威胁，从而我们就会感到沮丧、恼怒、无力感，甚至于到最后就放弃。但是如果我们处于 growth mindset 的话呢，我们就会把这些挑战看成，甚至于是挫折和失败，都会看成是学习和成长的机会，从而可以更快地找到合适的方法，更镇静地去应对当前的情况，然后就可以有机会把威胁化成真正的机会。所以这就是在职场中为什么 growth mindset 如此的重要。那么 next。OK， 所以大家会看到 fixed mindset， 其实我们在内心深处是跟自己说I should be good, I'm good，然后我要 prove I'm good，但是如果我是 growth mindset 的话，我会相信 I can get better，我一定可以变得更好，只要通过持续不断的努力，我一定可以变得更好。所以这就是两者之间最大的不同。Next slide。当我们还是孩子的时候呢，其实我们大多数时候所流露的自然状态就是 growth mindset。我们总是会对事情充满好奇，充满了期待，充满了探索的精神。在学习和训练非常复杂的技能的时候，比如说筷子吃饭啊，从爬到走啊，我们其实不论失败多少次，我们都没有想过放弃。Next slide, thank you。但是当我们渐渐长大，我们就开始在学业中我们大家其实在中国的教育环境中长大的各位，我们都深有体会。我们在学业中，我们在社会上，我们甚至于在家庭里，都会被越来越多的标准要求来评估、来排名。很多人都会告诉你，你不够好，你做错了，然后会告诉你说失败了是一件很糟糕的事情。然后我们就会慢慢的失去孩提时候的 growth mindset 的状态，为了证明自己优秀，慢慢的活成了别人希望的样子。好的 ，next slide。通过 Carol Dweck 的研究，他和 Susan McKee 是 Growth Mindset Institute 的创始人，他们二位呢已经有10多年在一起共同研究的时间，他们共同在2016年提出了 Fixed Mindset Trigger 这个很重要的概念，就是说在职场中常见8种情境，这8种情境呢，人们的 mindset 会被 trigger。这些 mindset 的 trigger 呢，就会影响到我们的情绪，我们的动机，因为影响了我们的动机，就会引导我们的行为，最终就会带来我们不同的 performance result， 带来不同的业绩表现。通过大量的数据研究，我们发现大多数人在职场中都存在一种或多种 trigger。Next slide。在最新的 Carol Dweck 的这本书叫 Handbook of Wise Intervention， 在这本书中 Carol Dweck 指出，我们不能只是知道什么是 growth mindset， 我们必须对 trigger 的反应要进行反思，并且寻找到有效的策略进行管理，才能够帮助我们更长期的拥有 growth mindset。 Next slide。 同时 Carol 和 Susan 呢，他们所开发的mindset profiler， 这是一个心智测评工具，就可以通过来了解 trigger 对我们每个人的影响程度的强与弱，来帮助我们了解自己会被哪些情境和挑战诱发我们不同的 trigger， 诱发我们不同的心智反应。OK, next slide。 在这里和大家介绍3种，因为我们在中国做了非常多的样本研究，会看到有这样的几个 trigger 在中国人群身上经常发生，我指的是职场人群。第一个 trigger 就是 high effort。 那 high effort 指的是你需要通过大量的努力才能有所收获，你需要付出大量的精力、专注力和时间。比如说当我们跳槽，或者我们调到一个新的部门的时候，经常会出现这种情况的。我们需要迅速的学会适应新的环境，或者说我们原来已经掌握和熟知的领域，但是现在我们不再熟悉，这个时候我们就陷入了高度努力的情境。有些人就会转向 fixed mindset， 如果不加以干预的话呢，人们就会从高难度的任务和角色中放弃或者退出。但是也有一些人在这样的情境中，他们会转向更加牢固的 growth mindset， 也就是说他们相信当我们要追求目标的时候，付出大量的努力和提高自己是必不可少的步骤。 所以当任务和角色不需要付出大量努力的时候，他们反而会觉得不满或者厌倦。所以这是第一个 trigger 想和大家分享，就是 high effort。Next slide。第二个 trigger 想和大家分享的是 feedback。Ron, please move to next slide. Okay, thank you. 第二个常见的 trigger 是 feedback。feedback 就是指被批评了。sorry, the 上一个。
OK，可能电脑有点延迟。
OK。feedback 呢是非常容易会诱发我们进入 fixed mindset。大家有没有这样的体会啊？就是如果我们被批评了，我们很想为自己辩护，对吗？而且我们会很愤怒，而且我们可能会觉得这个批评是针对我的，是说我不好，但不是针对我的客观事件的。所以当人们有 fixed mindset trigger 的时候呢，我们就会把批评和反馈看成是对我的一个评价。那么这样的话呢，我们就没有办法通过行动来提升自己的能力。那么这个时候呢 feedback 就会变成一个威胁会觉得非常的情绪上也会受到伤害，自尊也会受到伤害，这个就会进一步阻碍我们学习成长和改进的能力。但是另外一些人呢 feedback 就会让他们转向更牢固的 growth mindset， 这些人会非常喜欢或者寻求 feedback，他们会希望说，你们能不能多给我一些反馈，让我知道我还有什么地方可以进步。如果他们觉得说我们的确是做错了，他们觉得这是我们工作中可能存在的缺点，如果通过知道这些缺点，我就可以加以改进。所以这就是 feedback 对我们的影响。Next slide, thank you。最后一个想和大家分享的，我相信可能我在中国人群中看到大概有60%以上都有的 trigger， 就是 success of others， 就是和他人比较，他人的成功。这个在中国人群中特别普遍，就是说自己的同事或者朋友取得了成功，比如说升职了、加薪了、被表彰了，这些情况通常就会引发对比，对吗？我们就会开始比了，我们会把自己的表现呢和那些受到表彰的人进行比较，这个时候人们就会陷入 growth mindset or fixed mindset。 如果他陷入的是 fixed mindset， 他们就会认为他人的成功就意味着是对自己能力的否定。当他们看到其他人被表彰，他们就会想 OK， 我永远也做不到他那样，或者是我在这个地方应该没有机会了。但如果是 growth mindset 呢，其实我们反而会觉得说，这些受到表彰的人其实就是榜样啊，我们把这些榜样的实践看成自己的一个成功的路径，我们可以向他学习，我们可以从这个当中选择我们想要去采取的有效策略。 OK， 所以通过这3个 trigger 的介绍，我相信大家可能可以对自己在日常生活和工作中的一些反应和选择有一些了解。Next slide。那么我们怎么才能够塑造更牢固的 growth mindset 呢？其实 Carol 给了我们一个非常简单但是却需要长期坚持的公式。OK， 这个公式就是现在大家所看到的这一章，就是说当我们用 growth mindset 来支持刻意练习深思熟虑的行动，包括持续不断的努力、良好的策略和向他人寻求帮助，我们就可以让自己变得更好。Next slide, thank you. 这个延迟是不是很厉害，是吗？
对，我这边还是稍等我一下，我退出一下看看行不行，这样会不会好一点？
你退出了进不来了？
没有，我退出全屏。
好的，这张图呢是关于我们每个人都有可能会待的5个区域从 comfort zone 到 avoidance zone、learning zone、growth zone 和 stretch zone。想问一下，你觉得你经常会待在哪一个区域？实际上，我们所有想要追求的那些 meaningful goal， 其实都不在我们的 comfort zone， 对吗？可是为什么我们在大多数时间，实际上研究表明我们每个人大概有60%的时间，其实都是一天当中的60%的时间，其实我们都自觉或者不自觉的是待在 comfort zone 的。当然，一方面这个可以 save energy， 对吗？我们不用太累。 但是一方面呢，如果一直待在 comfort zone 里头，我们其实是没有可能去追求那些我们真正想追求的目标的。那么如何才能让自己去走出舒适区，走向 learning zone、growth zone 和 stretch zone 呢？我们可以看一下下一页。下一页其实我没有太多的时间可以和大家具体讲，大家可以拍一张照留下来，因为这一张是非常重要的。可以把 Step 4和 Step 5对。OK， 其实这个5个 Step 是非常重要的，可以帮助我们更有效的从 comfort zone 走向 stretch zone， 就是走向那些我们真正想要追寻的那些有意义的目标的很有效的方法。通过对我们的自我觉察，我们了解了自己的 trigger， 对吗？然后也通过对自己的一些思考，我们去找寻和了解自己真正想要去的一些 goals and ambition， 这是一个开始。然后呢，在向着目标行动的过程中，我们就可以让自己更加在一个心流状态，在一个 flow 的状态去追寻我们想要追寻的目标。下一页，谢谢。OK，growth mindset 呢，现在正在组织支持人才发展、支持绩效提升和组织变革，在方方面面起到越来越重要的作用。Next slide。我想和大家说的是，成长型心智 growth mindset 它其实不是一个事件或者是一个想法，实际上人们转向成长型心智 growth mindset 的过程是不容易的。即使是一个相当具备 growth mindset 的人，比如 Cr Cro 本人，其实也仍然会在一些情境和挑战面前再次呈现 fixed mindset。所以这是一个一生都会伴随我们，试图保护我们的机制。但是当我们越了解触发我们 fixed mindset 的那些原因，就越可能在出现 fixed mindset 的时候保持警惕。首先我们都欢迎他的到来，然后感谢他为保护我们所做出的努力，然后对他说，可能我会失败，但是我愿意试一试，你可不可以给我一些耐心？最后我想把 Cr Cro 的 TED 演讲的结尾送给大家，祝我们都拥有一个更好的生活，都成为一个更有勇气的人，然后都拥有一段更丰富的人生旅程。谢谢。
Okay, thank you, Stella, for the great sharing. I know that you choose to share in Chinese because you think this is the best way to bring the audience the insights. So for the audience who are not Chinese speakers, don't worry. For the rest of the sessions, they are going to be English. Without further ado, let me just move to the next session. Okay, the next session is from Fred Yang, Chief Development Officer from KPP Biosciences, who will bring us the enhancement and growth from the career change. Fred.
Okay, thank you, Ron. Thank you, everyone. Good morning. Next slide, please. Slides is not moving at this moment.
Okay, there's some issue with my computer. Apologize for that. Let me just get out and then rejoin.
Okay, thank you. So I was listening, actually, good morning again. I'm Fred Yang, Chief Development Officer for KBP Biosciences. I was past president for SAPA-DC chapter. So thinking about the changes of careers and growth and everything else, I was just thinking about just listen to what Stella just said. Success of others actually is actually in the growth mindset. People make people growing better. So let's think about. Just perfect. It's a perfect segue of this slide. I was looking around, look at the people who had a change of careers. We don't have to go very far. There are some very outstanding SAPA people who had career changes. Johnson, who is going to be our panelist in next later on, he actually changed from a scientist to project management. And our previous SAPA president, Amanda Fu, from physician to clinical research, and now she's the founder and the CEO of Redbud Medicine, and going to entrepreneur. And our current president, Vince Dunn, who according to James, handsome guy, actually also made a career change from academic to biotech, and now he's a venture capitalist. So this is actually a very good example. If you look around, especially in DC area, you saw lots of lawyers, and all of those lawyers actually originally was trained as a scientist to begin with. So there are a lot of examples around us with career change. So with growth mindset, think about what Stella said. They should give you a lot of what should I say, the good examples for if you are thinking about change, that you can follow them. Next slide. Sorry, it's moving. It's not moving. Sorry.
Yeah, it's showing second slide on my computer already. It is showing up.
Don't worry. Yep, it show up. So regarding myself, Ron actually to begin with, she wanted me to say more about myself. Actually, for myself, instead of a change career, I'm more or less in the growth path. I started my career as a mathematician to begin with. I was trained in mathematics. I keep telling everyone my last chemistry and biology classes was in high school. And then after came to US, I become a statistician and start my career as an industry biostatistician. Gradually, I start to to learn more about not only just biostats, but the programming, data management. Gradually, I'm getting more into the clinical trial research and clinical trials and really clinical development. I become a trialist. Then gradually, I learn more and become a developer. I'll share with everyone about what's the different perspective as a different type of person. And now I'm with KBP Biosciences and as a biotech executive. So what I'm trying to say is that, as we grow or as we change, I'm trying to borrow what Stella said earlier. This growth mindset plus the deliberate effort actually will make us become better as we go. Next slide. So I think what I would want to say in here is really to share with everyone what I call the 4 B's in terms of making make changes or growth. So we need to be genuine, be curious, be brave, be persistent. This is actually has lots of overlap with what Stella said. Be genuine means you need to find the things you really want to do. That's really, you need to follow your heart. Be curious. You need to really start to not just focus on what you're currently doing now. If you really want to change or you really want to grow, you need to really expand your knowledge base. Obviously, if you want to do something different or you want to grow, you've got to reach out, and then you want to make a change. Just make the change, and be persistent. Going through the change actually is not that easy. I mean, sometimes the change is easy, but just stick on what you're doing is not easy. So that's the 4 B's. When I'm thinking about the career change or growth, that's what we need to keep in mind. Next slide. Okay. While we're waiting for the next slide, so I mentioned that I started as a statistician. So in the studies, I'm talking about the expanding of knowledge base. I started as a statistician. In statistician universe, if there's it's lots of things around the methodology, standard, programming, validation, final results. That's my universe. That was actually a lot. I'm sure everyone, when you start the career, when you start, working on in your postdoc or PhD training, or even at grads, you have a small universe around you that really say this is really everything that matters. It's very complicated. In the sense, everybody's individual discipline. Otherwise, we won't have that many disciplines. Okay, go to the next slide. So while we're thinking about this is a universe that was the universe of a statistician. But when you pull yourself above just the statistics, when you become a trialist, if you think about running a clinical trial, then you have a bigger universe for you. So in here, statistics actually become just a small part of the bigger universe. So you have to think about the study design. You have to think about all of the other things before you can say here is something that the study was designed and be able to conduct and then conduct it accordingly and have the result that is interpretable. So that's become a trialist. That's what you need to think about. Next slide. So when you become a developer, while we're waiting for the slides, when you become a developer, actually, we're waiting, the clinical trial development become clinical trial become a smaller part, another smaller part of a bigger universe. So really, there's from preclinical to pharmacology to clinical to regulatory to medical affairs, all of these actually constitute a universe of a developer's universe. So the spirit of what we're of these previous three slides is really trying to say, look, if you want to change a career, if you want to grow, if you want to do anything beyond what you're doing, you need to be able to be aware of what the bigger universe is, and actually end up you might be able to find the opportunity in the bigger universe with your whatever you have in your base. I used to say something like hand on the keyboard, head above cloud. That's actually if you really want to change your career, if you want to grow, enhance yourself, that's what we should always do. I'm still doing that. So that's about the knowledge, expanding knowledge base. Be curious, hand on keyboard, head above cloud. Understand the bigger universe, that you will be able to find new opportunity. Next slide. Well, just now we think about it. We want to change. We want to do whatever, but it's not like it. You can just do it by yourself. Actually, my long-term experience is really reach out, learn from the leaders and the influential people. I have two people actually. Recent two people I had have a big influence on me. Frank and Long. Both of them, if you look at them, both of them started with academic career. And they have they start in the quantitative science, stats or the quantitative science, then gradually assume the responsibility of overall development, and then even Frank end up as a chief safety officer for GSK. So all of these really, what they did is that they actually expand their universe gradually and throughout their career. So again, for all of us who want to grow, who even want to change the career, Networking is very important. Find the right people, learn from them, and to see what they're doing. Again, Stella's example is growth mind is you see other people did something and successful, just try to follow their steps. Next slide. Okay, so we're waiting for the next slide. So coming back to these 4 B's we talk about. Before I wrap up, I do want people remember these 4 B's, but I do want to share some personal story of myself, especially in terms of why I'm here with KBP. So in 2009, while I was in GSK, I wrote a paper published in China Economy on the global development for Chinese pharmaceutical company, or for that matter, Chinese pharmaceutical industry. The main point in there is trying to say, instead of a developed drug in China, focus in China on generic, we should focus all of the, if a Chinese company, any company want to grow, should focus on global development for innovative drug. So I had a chance to talk to various people about the idea of the paper. I even got supported by SAPA, did a presentation at Shanghai Bio. Unfortunately, the response at that time was miserable. The main response is that there are lots of opportunity in China in generic drugs. Of course, there are lots of opportunity in China in real estate. So no one is interested in putting money and resource for new drug development, and especially global development. And we all know that costs a lot of money. Unfortunately, I did meet Dr. Zhenhua Huang, the founder of KBP, and through a common friend. So I shared with him my paper. Long story short, in 2015, Jane came to me with the KBP company and said, "Okay, here it is. I'm trying to do this in the develop new drug in the global scale. Do you want to join me?" And I actually found out that while I was writing the paper, talking about that, he actually started to do that by himself. So this is really, I'm very excited. Of course, I'm going to join. That is exactly what I want to do 5-6 years ago. And then the rest of his history. So obviously, from a big company to a small company, small Chinese biotech company, I have lots of learning and adaptation. But I stay put, and it's what I want to do, so I have to deal with it. So at the end of the day, now we have been I've been with KBP for 6 years, with a lot of we achieved a lot of successful development milestone, and really now I have no regret on it. So the spirit of this story of this is that really, in addition to what I mentioned earlier, be curious, reach out, go with your heart, do something you really want to, be persistent, continue through. You will be success. You will be able to find the opportunity to enhance, to growth, or even find a better career. That's all I have, and thank you very much. I want to actually thanks to Ron for helping me to make the slide look better, but is there any question?
We're about time, actually. If we don't have question, James, you want to move us to the next panel?
Sure, yeah, I'll start next. And by the way, you can send your questions in the chat, and we're going to have a 45-minute Q&A networking session after this. So for Fred or for anybody else, if you do have a question, just send it. Fred, thank you very much. And by the way, as someone who also took his last chemistry class in high school, I could very much relate to your story and enjoyed it. Except for me, I feel like I spend most of my day hand on keyboard, head on hand. So I'm trying to follow your advice and put my head in the clouds. That's very wise words. So we're going to move now to a panel discussion, our first panel discussion. This is going to focus on career changes, perhaps not surprisingly, that could be from academia to industry, from science to business, or from operations to management. We'll have 4 speakers. They are Dr. Johnson from Novartis, Dr. Alex Jai from Janssen, Dr. Ling Hao from the George Washington University, and Dr. Yanling Ma from Bristol Myers Squibb. So thank you guys. Thank you all for joining us as panelists and for sharing today. Let's, if we don't mind, go around and do a 1-minute introduction for each person, a self-introduction. So Dr. Sun, I'll start with you.
Hi, good morning, James. Good to see you again, and thank you for inviting us to be this session. Before introducing myself, I think I want to thank Stella for that opening presentation, the growth mindset. It's a very, very important. Many things I feel very resonate with what she's saying. Introduction: I am, as Fred said, I'm the program lead at Novartis, and I'm the current president for SAPA, and I've gone through quite a bit in my life, and will be happy to share with you more. James, the only thing I would say is not looking at what I have achieved. What I want to share with you is behind the scene that you don't know, the lessons I have learned, and then the failure I've made who I am now. So that's what I want to share with you. Thank you.
Excellent, excellent. So Dr. Ma, we'll go to you next.
Yeah, sure. Good morning, everyone. I want to thank the organizer for inviting me. It's really my honor to be here. It's just the 2 sessions, really eye-opening already. I hope you enjoyed the forum as I did. I basically a brief introduction of my scientific background. I get my PhD training back in China, Shanghai Institute of Material Analytica. And after that, I entered industry, Eli Lilly, in Shanghai R&D Center for 2 years. After the 2 years industry experience, actually go back to academia to pursue further scientific training at NIH as a postdoc and a research fellow focusing on metabolic disease research, discovery. After that, I obtained my current position at Bristol Myers Squibb as a principal scientist. Again, really excited to be here to discuss and talk with you. Thank you.
Great introduction. Dr. Jai, next to you.
All right, okay. Hello, everyone. It's my great pleasure to meet you all on this SAPA-DC 2021 Career Development Forum. A simple introduction of myself. I am Alex Jai, an analytical chemist. I earned my doctoral degree in 2016 from Louisiana State University. And after that, I started my industrial career from a CRO company. And then I got chances to serve big pharma companies such as BMS and GSK. And right now I am a scientist of Janssen, focusing on protein analysis. So I'm looking forward to sharing my experience in the big pharma industries in the following discussions. Thank you all.
And we're looking forward to hearing it. Thank you so much. And finally, Dr. How to you?
Hi, everyone. I'm Ling. So I did my PhD in Wisconsin medicine. And then after that, I came to NIH local in Maryland to do for my postdoc. And after my postdoc, I started my own lab in George Washington University. That was in 2019. So it's a little almost 2 years right now. So I'll be excited to share with everyone my career trajectories and also how actually I decided to pursue academics. And for people that if you have questions about choosing academia or industry, and feel free to ask that question.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Ling, and thanks to everybody on the panel. Just for sort of a housekeeping note, so I'll ask a bunch of questions that we think the audience will have as well. Please keep your answers to 1 or 2 minutes. I know that's almost criminal. I think all of you guys have so much more value to share than 1 or 2 minutes per question, but we only have 20 minutes allocated total, including the introduction we've just had, so we want to keep it tight. And for the audience, if you do have a question, please put it in the chat. If we don't get to it, which is quite possible, please don't disappear. Afterwards, you have a chance to ask the question. We'll have that session after the whole event, so please don't forget that. And the panelists will do their best to stay around to answer the questions. So let me start with you, Dr. Sun. Could you give an example? I mean, one of the things I think we all know in life is that it's a lot less predictable than we think. You know, as humans, we want to imagine things go according to plan, but in real life, they don't at all. So career switching is a big part of that. What is one career switch that you have made, and how did you make it? Did it work out?
Yeah, I think for me, it's a switching from the lab to more of a management position. One thing Fred said, follow in his presentation, follow those people. I would say, not necessarily following us, just follow your heart, right? So what I mean by that is when I have done that, when I work in the lab, I think I enjoy it, but also I'm realizing who I am more. I do want to work with more people instead of working with the columns, with the animals and do animal experiment. And they do the switch. It was not easy, but what I found is that there are multiple channels to help us to get there. So I took my MBA study, and there during the study, I met somebody who was doing the project management field, and I did not understand that at all. But once you get a switch, once I get started, I talk to more people, and long and behold, I did that switch. That jump was not easy, but it's doable. More time, happy to share with you more. But I think the fundamental thing is, as I said, do follow your heart. The life is a precious, and you have a limited lifespan. How to do it? Do something you do enjoy, and not just following somebody else. I'll take a pause on that.
I think that's wonderful advice, and I think everybody would agree. Let me open up next question to the entire panel. We'll just go around and maybe a 1 minute or 2 minute maximum answer each. What does everybody think is the most important factor, or something that's very important in making a career decision? And I think, Dr. Sun, we just heard from you, we'll be following your heart. So maybe we could hear from the rest of the panel on that. And I'll add in a bonus question. Have you gotten, or what's the best career advice on those factors you've gotten? Okay, so how should people think? Someone, young person comes to you and says, I want to change careers, or I'm thinking about changing careers. I don't feel totally happy, but I'm really not sure how to create a mental framework. What advice would you give? Alex, I'll start with you.
All right, thank you. So to me, it's just since I'm just in the beginning stage of my career, so I'll just give simple questions to you. I'll give you, the audience, my superficial opinion on this topic. So I'm thinking maybe the best advice I can give is talk to the people in this field, in this industry. So like we have a lot of mentor-like people in SAPA-DC, and make friends with them and talk to them and let them give you their insight in this industry and in their career development. And I personally benefit a lot from that. I made a lot of friends from SAPA-DC, and by communicating with them, so I got a lot of valuable comments on career development. I personally benefit a lot from that. So I highly recommend to make friends in this industry and then get valuable comments from them. That's what I feel right now on this topic. Thank you.
That's just great advice. As someone who didn't do that for a long time, I mean, my career was held back, and it's just, once you're talking with the right people, things move so much faster. It really saves time, and it's just, you got to get your head above the rest of the trees, so to speak. It's great advice. Okay, Ling, I'll go to you next.
Sure. So I think we always say that follow your passion, right? Because sometimes, especially when you're young, you don't know what is your passion. Like, you don't know like what you really wanted to do in your whole life. So for me, I've been always in academia, but actually that also had a mindset changing, because I was actually thinking about industry when I just started my PhD. So I think instead of trying to like really look for what is your passion, sometimes if you have a passion, then it's easier, right? If you don't know what you really want to do, think about what you're good at. Because most of the times when you are good at something, you will develop passion for it. And when you have passion, and when people see that you're growing in this area, you develop more interest into it. So I think that's So think about what you're good at and think about what you don't like. So when you choose a career like a direction that you don't really hate too much about it, and you're really good at it, then eventually I think you will get more passionate about it. So that's just an alternative if you don't have really like a great passion, you know what you want to do in your future. So in terms of changing career, I think I agree with Alex that just talk to more people and talk to the right person, and also always keep open-minded and don't shut the doors just because you don't know this area. Just be open-minded and attend all the possible events you can, and then maybe one day you will find the really right position for you.
That's great advice. If you don't know what your passion is, start with what you're good at. And I share the same philosophy, Ling. We tend to like the things we're good at. We tend to be good at the things we like. There's a very high correlation between those. Okay, Yanling, I'll go to you last for this question.
Yeah, sure. I think that I want to echo all those great advice John and Ling and also Fred also shared. So much I have the same feeling, like you have to follow your heart, you have to have passion for your next career in your thinking, and lots of things I have the same feeling. But I want to emphasize something else, like for me, during my career development, I think I have the passion in drug development field, and that's the reason I first entered industry, Eli Lilly and Shanghai R&D Center. During there, I think the one important thing I have had done is set up my role model. I met there lots of talented people, and they like inspire me every day. I think I want to be someone like them and want at the position they were at. So with that, I will think what I'm missing if I want to be someone like them, what I need to do. That's I realize I need to take more scientific training if I want to go further in the drug development field, because everything is behind science. You have to get a really solid science evidence, and your drug development can go further. That's why I switched my career to academia again for a few years of scientific training. And also a second point I want to make is my current position. I set up new role models. I think someone's doing really great on their work. That's something I want to be good at, and I need to learn from them. And you always prepare to go to your next career development step. A second part I want to mention is if you want to make your career switch or your upgrade your career to the next step, I want to emphasize you should be prepared and to any opportunities that might like in front of you. For me, my personal experience is it's just when I find my current position, it's just a posting in the WeChat group. At that time, I got my CV updated, and I even prepared my slides before I saw the job posting. That's why you have to, because the opportunity is just in a really short time. After to the person who is recruiting, only take 1 day for the phone call interview, and only 1 week for the on-site interview. That's really short. You don't get your CV or slides prepared. I think it's get everything prepared for your next move is really important.
Yeah, that's a great point. When opportunities in life, they often happen very quickly, and sometimes we've been waiting for a long time, for years maybe, and then the actual window is surprisingly short. So it's important to be ready to pounce. Okay, so I've gotten some notes. We're running slightly behind schedule overall. Okay, so we're going to skip the next 5-minute break, which we have after this session. Shouldn't be a huge big deal. If you got to go to the bathroom, you go to the bathroom. But I do want to end with one final question for everybody on this panel. Either or both. One caution, bad career advice, or one common mistake that you see people making. What is that? And then finally, any last parting advice for the audience? Any final points you want to make? So one bad thing to avoid, and any final thoughts if you'd like. So Dr. Sun, I'll start with you.
Wonderful, thank you. I think the bad advice that people are not aware of is to, when you analyze your career choices, the penny wise and the pound foolish. That many people look at the thinking is what I want to do for next, quite focusing on the immediate short term we can get and following somebody else doing, whether money or not. But my encouragement is looking for a lot bigger beyond that. It's looking at the bigger picture is my number one thing. The other thing I would say is take ownership. Looking back at the entire topic of career switch, right? If you're thinking about it, the number one thing is to take ownership. This is your career, not somebody else. One of the quote I have remember I like a lot is, be yourself because every others has been taken. And that one I think is from Oliver Wilder. I think it's make you to think you want to create something for you and just for you. And also I got a note. One of the participants sent me a question. What's the biggest challenge? I would think looking back the career switch. The biggest challenge, James, is the initial hurdle. So by nature, when you're trying to switch a new area, it's always a very, very challenging. But believe yourself, once you get into it, the rest will be easy, is what I would share with you. That's good news.
Excellent. Thank you so much. We've got a lot of wisdom on this panel. I feel honored to be among you guys. Dr. Ma, we'll go to you next.
Yeah, I think I have the advice I have received that I really like a lot is like you have to make friends, not enemies, because the field is actually really small. It maybe have so much opportunities, but you cannot make enemies because someday you end up meet with your enemies again. So try to make friends. And the good advice I have received is from really talented retired people who have developed two drugs on the market. He gave us the advice before his retirement. He says the reputation is really important. It's really difficult to set up your gain your reputation, but it's really easy to lose. By that, you have to do your work really carefully and really good, and you cannot make make really careless mistakes. That's the advice I really like a lot.
Excellent. Alex, to you now in 1 minute, parting words and any bad advice or anything else you want to share.
All right. Okay. So I really agree that what Dr. Sun just said. So just don't fear to step out in this field. So there's 1 minute I would like to share. So there's one thing I would like to share in the last minutes is just don't think about failure. So failure is possible, it's acceptable, but fear is not. Okay, fear is not. Don't let the uncomfortable zone just fear you. Just dare to step out, and you will gain more than what you lose. So you'll be surprised at what you will get to make new steps in this field. So that's all I would like to share. Thank you.
Excellent. And a link to you.
Yeah, so bad advice I would say would be choose the job that pays you the most. So don't just choose based on the salary. I think money comes when you really enjoying your work and doing the right work. So that should not be your goal, especially when we are just stepping out of this university or school or PhD. Not much is going to pay you like as much as an established person, but it always going to grow. So I think look for, and then the good advice, sort of the similar thing for this would be go for a position that that really needs you, that you feel valued, you feel you have a growth aspect that you can really grow in this job, and that money will come eventually, and you will feel happy, and you will really enjoy your work and really grow in that atmosphere. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you to everybody. When I was, starting my career, I would have greatly wished to have had all this good advice at that time. I did not, so I made a lot of painful mistakes, but I'm sure a lot of people in the audience are benefiting from everything you guys have said. So again, Dr. John Sun, Dr. Yanling Ma, Dr. Alex Jai, and Dr. Ling Hao. Thank you all very much for participating in this panel. And with that, that concludes the first chunk, the first third, let's say, of our session today. And I will turn it to Rong next, who will lead us into the second part.
Yes, I'm seeing IMAP presentation on my screen, but I think people are still having break on the screen. Okay, cool. Great. Yeah, as James mentioned that given we're a little bit behind the time, we're just going to go directly to this second session. This session featuring a company presentation from IMAP. Mara, over to you. Or, yeah.
Hi, everyone. So this is Claire. I'm the USI head of IMAP US. And in the next several minutes, I will try to give you a presentation to help you understand the IMAP and also my team. And I think it was wonderful to hear all the great career advice in the last panel. And I think here it comes like we do have opportunities for you if you are considering career switch or you are considering new opportunities, if you are ready. So please, next. Yeah, so if you can help switch to the probably the third slide of it because we do, yeah. So I think next. So first, I think I would like to share with you some of the highlights of the company in the past incredible 5-year journey. So the company is founded in 2016 by Dr. Jingwu Zhang in China. And in the past 5 years, I mean, we have grown from a small biotech to about 300 employees globally, and with research and development offices in Shanghai, Beijing, Maryland, and San Diego. And the company has a very robust pipeline in immuno-oncology, and now with internal discovery and business development, so the company has about 15 pipeline assets. And aiming to transform from a clinical stage biotech to a biopharma. And we're also building manufacturing facilities in Hangzhou, China, and the pilot plant is expected by the end of next year. And in the meantime, the company is also building a commercialization team for sales and marketing in Shanghai, and that will actually to support the first product launch for our internal product starting next year as well. And you will see it in a minute in next several slides. And I think most critically, I think financial-wise, the company was also listed in NASDAQ January last year. And now, I think from a small biotech with a couple $100 million market cap, and we were able to rise to about 5 billion right now, just literally after a year and a half public trading, which gave a very strong and robust funding to support all the development globally. And also, I think in addition to the research and development activities actively ongoing, and we also are able to achieve multiple global partnership with different biotechs and big pharmas in different continents, which serve another very important engine for the company's pipeline and also financial growth. So next one. So I think the key differentiation of IMAP to many other biotechs is, I think, our robust pipelines in novel and highly differentiated biologics, especially in immuno-oncology. As you see here, the company also comprises of 2 pipelines. One is global portfolio, where it's mainly discovered internally and where we have the global rights. And also, I think we'll talk a little bit about our record-breaking deals with AbbVie on our CD47 antibodies, also called lemzoparlimab. which actually serve as a very important company milestones in many aspects. And on the other hand, also we're trying to in-license from other companies for the relatively late-stage products like phase 2, phase 3 programs, and where we can have a more faster-to-market strategies in China. And here, these slides show just quickly summarize what kind of targets we are working on here at the IMAP. And you can see it's really compass all the very innovative targets post checkpoint era. And we're really trying to tackle the very important questions here remaining in the immuno-oncology area is to see whether we can either improve the checkpoint inhibitor combination responses or tackle the tumor resistance. So the different technologies and strategies have been used, and a wide solutions will hope to be here to provide either the combination of the monoclonal antibodies with checkpoint inhibitors or through a bispecific antibodies technologies. So next one. So the next slides, I think just wanted to give you a glance of the company's whole pipeline. Yeah, there's some delay. So anyway, I think here I just want to more emphasize on the global portfolio where my team, IMAP US team, are working on. So my team is primarily comprised across the function of clinical operation, clinical development, regulatory affairs, clinical biomarker, and all other functions you could think of for clinical development and regulatory affairs. So the portfolios we are working on, mainly working on, is the one highlighted in green. And the first wave is including the differentiated CD47 antibody 73 with combination with checkpoint inhibitors, and also GM-sense antibody for COVID-19 cytokine release syndrome. And also, I mean, there's a few newer molecules like C5aR receptor and also bispecific and Claudin 4-1BB. Those for like just enter clinics since last year. And there's more to come. It's more for on the bispecific. So it's very robust pipeline discovered by internally. That's why I think we do have a lot of needs from different functions, including both the R&D and supporting functions. So next one. And next few slides. So this is I think the highlights of our anti-47 antibody, where I think it's we kind of differentiated from all other competitors with a good safety differentiation, and it has been demonstrated both preclinically and most importantly clinically. I think which enable us to achieve the global partnership with AbbVie. And the next slide. Next slide. You will see that. This global partnership with AbbVie was able to achieve $200 million at upfront payment and almost $2 billion in addition to other milestones, so which really helped the company to achieve at the stage right now. So, yeah, if you can scroll down to slide 11. And maybe 12. And then I think just wanted to show you that the company that do have various and very flexible, I would say, strategic partnership with different leading global companies via different kinds of partnership strategies. Some of those are partnership, like our 47 development programs, but some of those are like just in licensing, and we're doing it the development in China and then further commercialization. And some of the programs we do co-development, and also we out-license those deprioritized projects to other companies as well. So next one. here, I think just one highlight of the financial status of the company. I think right now, since the company already public listing, I think the funding wise, it's very stable, and we do have a robust funding to sustain the all global clinical development and the activities for the next couple of years. So next. So I think in the end, just want to say the company is in a very critical stage, transition from a clinical stage biotech to biopharma, as you see. That the manufacturing facility is under construction, and the commercial team is also fiercely recruiting. And I mean, come with such a robust pipeline, we are really looking for talents. And then the very last slide. So here is part of my team. And our office is in Rio, Washingtonia, facing the lake. And we are really looking for the talents to join us, to really join, to build the next, I would say, more successful years with IMF. So with that, I will conclude, and thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Claire. James is having some technical issues, so I'm going to pick up here. And the next is the career challenge and opportunities in clinical CRO from Henry Wu, who is the founder and CEO of CR Medicon Research. Henry, over to you.
Sure. Yeah, you can just move to the next slide. Then, thank you very much for SAPA-DC to give us opportunity to discuss with this audience regarding the opportunities and challenges in CRO. The committee mentioned to me that actually the audience basically all know about the clinical development process. So actually here I just show this flow chart without going into any details. Well, basically, develop new drug or new devices is a very time-consuming, very costly process. So starting from preclinical and then to clinical stage, and then we'll have some post-marketing process as well. So and then in between, there's always communication with the regulatory agencies. Next slide. Yeah, so this slide also, I'm not going to go into the details. Basically, what I want to show is that why CRO is needed in this whole picture. Well, in the previous slide, we can see it's a very long process with regulatory communication all the way. And then here, when you go into a particular clinical trial, actually you will see all the different skill sets at different stage. For example, at the beginning, for the protocol setup, actually you need the medical strategy team, the medical writing team. You also need other functional area to involve to have a good protocol in place, and other functional area including, for example, statistics, pharmacovigilance, pharmacologist, and many different functional areas. And also, when you get into the actual conduct stage, you need a large clinical operation team. You also need to have all the different functional team like PK scientists. You need to have all the different vendors to help you to do all the testing. You need the biometrics team to help you to do the analysis. You need the medical team to help you to do the medical monitoring. So all kinds of tasks involved when you go into the implementation stage. And certainly at the end of the clinical trial, you need to write up the report by the clinical operation team, by the medical writing team, and then also if it is a pivotal study, potentially after that you also will have the NDA activity after the clinical trial. So you can see this in this whole process. Actually, there will be many functional teams involved in the process. So with so many teams involved, actually, and also if we look at the current landscape of new drug or new device development, actually you can see that right now for the new drug, new device development actually is so much more distributed than a few years ago. Actually, compared to 5 to 10 years ago, the landscape is totally different. In the past, when I started my career in this industry, actually, basically most of the development were in the big pharmas. Actually, they develop compound and then they have a self-sufficient functional service team within the company, and then they train people and then develop their compounds. Right now, with all the challenges facing the new drug, new device development, actually you can see very often the model is that the compound is developed in a new biotech, a new startup, and then after the product is more mature, potentially they will collaborate with some bigger pharma, bigger biotech to further the development. With this more distributed development landscape, potentially you can see that for a smaller biotech, smaller pharma, potentially it will be very difficult for them to actually build up the development team within the company. So that's why very often for these companies, they will need to rely on service providers like us to provide the assistance to them in order to further their drug and device development. For CRO, Contract Research Organization, for CRO, actually, we are kind of like a platform company that enable all the different device and pharmaceutical companies to help them with the development. If they lack a certain area of expertise, we will help them to supplement their expertise. If they need us to conduct the whole study for them, then actually we will need to have the whole spectrum of knowledge to help them to conduct the whole study. Because for many of the smaller biotech, small pharma, actually, many of them actually very limited size of personnel. For them, not only it's difficult for them to have the knowledge base for all the functional areas. Actually, even multiple vendor management sometimes is a challenge to them. So actually, for CRO like us, actually, to be able to provide wide spectrum of services become very important. So the challenges. Yeah, so the challenges to the drug development still applies in this case. We multidisciplinary, so we need to have experts in all the functional areas in order to be a successful CRO. Investment demand for any of the new functional areas, actually, once you go into it and to develop it, and there's always an investment demand. Basically, you need to set up the process, hire the people, set up the system. So for each functional area, there's an investment cycle in it. Cross-border collaboration. So for new drug, new device development, new drug is for the world. Actually, that's actually one of our investors mentioned this to us, and actually I agree. I cannot agree more. If you want, if you have a good drug candidate, and you always want to develop for the whole world rather than limited to your own country. So for a successful CRO, actually, we need to be able to provide cross-border services. Efficiency. So certainly, for CRO, if we cannot develop the drug more efficient than a pharma or than a biotech, actually, why would they even hire a CRO? So for us, for CRO, with so many clients, so many studies, we need to have more efficient process in place, and we need to have more better algorithm to allocate the resource within the company, so that we can adjust ourselves to dynamic needs from our clients and also from the ongoing projects. The region and culture that certainly is inherent to the new drug development. We need to deal with different region, different culture in the process. the talent attraction and retaining, similar to the biotech pharma, for us, we need to have a very large talent pool in order to support our operation. We cannot always hire very experienced talent. Actually, we need to hire some. We need to have a talent a ladder in terms of the talent acquisition within the company. We need to have some new fresh people, fresh candidates. And we need to train them and let them make them become experienced to be able to handle all the projects. At the same time, we need to have some mid-layer management, and also we need to have some very experienced leaders in order to set up the whole framework, the whole system. So for sales, there's always a huge challenge in terms of talent acquisition and also the retention. Yeah, so this slide actually, SAPA team actually make this slide for me just so that actually this might be overlap a little bit with the panel discussion later on. How do I get into this business? Well, I have been in a sales business almost for my whole career. Well, I've been in large pharma briefly. So my first job was in CRO, and then I went into pharma, taste the difference a little bit, and then continue my career path in the CRO. That might be a personal choice that we can discuss more during the panel discussion. For sales, I think the most interesting part to me is that we are always facing dynamic requirements, dynamic needs from our clients. We see new things every day. Basically, you see novel study designs, you see novel products, you see them from all the different therapeutic areas. So certainly that's something that keep me motivated, keep me interested, and keep on doing this. But how I get where I am now, actually, the audience might not know actually where I am now. I've been in this industry for more than 20 years, and right now, Sun Medicon itself is a pretty new CRO. We have only existed for less than 5 years, 4.5 years by now. But right now we have over 700 people in the company now. So we have been growing very rapidly over the past few years, thanks to the regulatory environment change in China, and also thanks to such strong growth from Chinese biotech pharmaceutical companies into US. So because of that, we have been growing extremely quickly in the past few years. Okay. So I think I guess for some of these items, since you might overlap with our discussion during panel discussion, I'll pause right here, and then we can go into the panel discussion to discuss more. Ron?
Great. Thank you, Henry. And I know that your company just got merged with Pharmaron, so all the best with the future development of the firm. With that, we are nicely moving to our second panel. The topic about this panel is about cultural difference. Either it's topics like how to express ourselves in the workplace, in the US environment, how to move up, or even whether to choose to stay in the US or go back to China. The speakers on this panel will be, as you can see, Yuan from Accenda, Charles Lee from Evergreen Therapeutics, Vince, our SAPA-DC president, and give me 1 second, Henry, who just shared the topic. Henry, you have introduced yourself. Why don't the rest of the panelists give an introduction? Wayne, do you want to kick us off?
Sure, thanks. Nice to meet you, everyone. My name is Wayne Su. I'm a director in a global consulting firm. My background and expertise is perhaps a little bit different from the rest of the people on the call, is that my expertise is on value-added access strategies for innovative pharmaceutical assets, meaning I'm the guy who brings a asset from the clinical development stage onto a payer's formulary. I've started 2 consulting teams from scratch in 2 different companies with team members in, of course, the US, but also in Europe and China. In the past, I've also been very closely involved in lobbying the US government on behalf of the biopharma industry on things ranging from drug coverage policies to reimbursement and pricing. Thanks.
Charles, you're next.
Hi, everybody. This is Charles. I'm currently the Vice President of Business Development at Evergreen Therapeutics, which is a biotech company that's based in the Bethesda. So we're hiring as well. And previously, I was a scientist at NIH. Then I took MBA classes at Johns Hopkins. And then I came into the business world and served a couple of CROs and biotechs. And actually, Henry is my previous boss. Nice to meet you, Henry. That's about me.
Okay, Vince. You want to just say hi?
Everyone. I think I already had enough introduction during today's events also. I will be very brief. So I'm currently the president of SAPA-DC, so I'm representing SAPA-DC. You see my title. But my real job is a biotech venture capitalist right now. I work for a investment firm called Hong Kong Capital. But before that, I was in academia. I even got a few academic jobs from the US, UK, and from China. But I didn't choose academia. I instead went to industry. I did a few years of biotech R&D research and development. But then earlier this year, I started to do biotech VC. So happy to meet everyone, and also happy to share more experiences and thoughts with everyone. Thanks.
Great. Thank you all for the introductions. So the rule for this panel is very similar to our first one. I'm going to ask you a few questions, and then please share your stories with the audience and your learnings. And also, please try to limit your answers to 1 minute or maybe at most 2, so that we can get as many questions as possible. Okay. So first question, coming from a Chinese cultural Chinese background, how do you think we should adapt to the U.S. in the U.S. environment? While returning our personality, but also engage with people from a different background? Who wanna kick us off first?
I can get started. So I think there are things that we need to, coming from a Chinese culture, we should recognize, as everybody, most people do, that there are things that we should completely forget, and then immerse ourselves into American culture. For example, in East Asian culture, there's a famous saying, right? When a nail sticks out, it will get hammered down. Over here, everything I do is to stick out. So that's definitely one polar opposite. Another one is that when in East Asian culture, we value a leader being humble. Well, here we value a leader being confident and strong. So I would say, whenever an Asian leader gives a speech, that person may begin with an apology, while a Western leader gives a speech, that person usually begins with a joke. I begin every speech of mine with a joke. And thirdly is, growing up, I don't know about the rest of the participants, but I grew up in a very traditional Chinese family, and my parents always told me that you're not good enough, you all have room for improvement. While that is true, over here we also need to recognize that you don't have to be perfect to lead other people. You don't have to be perfect to excel at what you're doing. So that's, having said that, I also don't want to create the impression that Chinese culture and American culture are totally different, especially when it comes to corporate culture. One saying, I remember before I came to the States many years ago, people tell me that in the States, you just have to keep your heads down and work hard, and then you'll get rewarded. That may be true in the first couple of years of career, but it's actually a very dangerous thought once you grow into the middle management and even into the executive rank. I'm sure other executives on the call can share a lot along those lines. And lastly, I would say that don't blame everything on culture, because a lot of time it's about ourselves, it's about me, right? I made so many mistakes in my life, and most of them had nothing to do with culture. So, but I want to see what the rest of the panel thinks.
Charles, you want to go next?
Thank you. I think culture thing to me, I'm not very sensitive to culture because I always know quite deep in Chinese culture and know how human thinks. I'm a person that's very interested in psychology, so sometimes I involve with HR work with my previous company or current company. I think one thing in common is that you have a help mentality. Everybody wants other people to support and help, like doing SAPA thing, like help your colleagues in your organization. That's always get you something, if not short term, but by long term, you become very popular. You're very capable for allocate resources inside and out. That's common in both in China and the US. If you keep that in mind, you'll be much better either employer or leader in your organization. It's a very powerful thing that to get to where you want to be. That's my only thought at this moment. Just help.
Sounds good, Henry.
Okay. Yeah. So from left to right. Yeah. That's fine. Yeah. As I said, we have employees from many different countries, so we deal with this culture issue daily. I think my experience is that the key is that you need to be open to different cultures and respect each culture. And actually, when we go into each new country, actually we need to learn about the culture first to see whether this is something that we will be able to adapt to. This is quite important. For anything that make you feel a little bit uncomfortable, try to think from other people's perspective. This one actually is the same within the same culture as well. So for different culture, then you might see this actually more often. For example, like when we move into Japan, or we'll start our business in Japan. But for Japanese, actually, most of the discussion happen offline. You just need to be comfortable with the culture and try to adapt into the culture.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I see.
I think everyone,
Go ahead.
all the other three panelists have shared a very good advice. And I'm not sure I'm the right person to share a good advice, but I would say also a few words. First, I think the foremost thing I think is important is you need to be yourself. No matter you go to this culture, you go to that culture, go to this country or go to that country. Just first thing, trust yourself, have confidence in yourself and be yourself. So that's number one. And then the second thing is be proud. I think Chinese people should be proud no matter where you go. You should be so proud of your culture and your identity, and then that can help, I think. But of course, at the same time, you need to respect other cultures and respect other people. Always be humble and willing to learn. The third thing I would say is no matter where you are, just dare to excel, just like Wayne just said. I think it doesn't matter. Don't confine yourself thinking, oh, I'm not now in a different culture, I'm now in a different society, in a different country. Doesn't matter. Just do your best and always dare to excel, like when you were in China. The fourth thing, I think, I always like that quote, and I think it's a lot of wisdom. I don't need to expand. But the first Chinese American president of UC Berkeley said, if you want to be successful in this country, in the United States, you got to be a Chinese and you got to be an American as a Chinese American. So those are great wisdom. So I will just stop there with my thoughts.
Thank you, Vince. And also that leads nicely to my second question. So we talk about the identity, we talk about the culture. How do you think about the career progression, glass ceiling, how to stand out? Wayne, do you want to share your thoughts?
Yeah, sure. So that is definitely a very sophisticated question and probably would take 20 hours to answer rather than 2 minutes. So I'll do my best. There are some strategies to first, I don't think there's such a thing as a glass ceiling. Many glass ceilings, in my experience, are personal limitations. It's just that when you put your Chinese, right, in the American corporate America culture, it's very easy to attribute many of our failures to culture differences or glass ceilings. So first piece of advice I want to give everybody is that don't recognize the glass ceilings. So there's nothing to break, and completely own yourself, own your mistakes, and own your success. Just some technical advices I want to give. One is that I'm always in a marketing mode. It is my personal principle that if you don't market it, you never done it. So everything you do, if you think you've done a good job, market it to your superiors, market it to your colleagues, and market it to your subordinates so that you can create a following. And second is be assertive. Always bring every meeting you go in, bring opinion with you, regardless of how you think of that opinion, regardless how powerful or how highly achieved the rest of your meeting attendees are. Of course, that your opinion must be based on great research. Means that you have done your homework. And thirdly is recognize that everything is deep-rooted in the quality of your work. Meaning that if you're doing research, do it well. If you're doing marketing, be very outgoing and market to every person you meet. Whatever you do, do it well. And lastly, a lot of what I want to say already in books. So there are 2 books I want to share with the audience here. One is by a person I admire a lot, Ray Dalio. His book Principles is one I've read 4 to 5 times. And another one is the one I'm reading currently. It's called Extreme Ownership. It's written by 2 former Navy SEALs about business management and how to draw parallel between business management and military management.
Thank you, Charles.
What's your question? Okay.
Glass ceiling.
Okay, and I totally agree with Wayne. That's why I invite Wayne. And always kind of on the sort spot is kind of ahead of me, and I don't recognize sitting that much. And sometimes I think if you see there's sitting, you're not good enough. And I play soccer as a great team, and I bred a lot of great team in this region. So I know if you can beat the American team as well, if you train, if you can dedicate, if you glue those people together. And I think I learned a lot of lesson from Henry as well, because I used to belong to Henry's team, and we are growing so fast, and we broke a lot of ceilings, either in the marketing or in the sales. So I think if you don't believe it, sometimes you trust the power of believing. You believe the power of beliefs. That's if you have sitting in there, you are just like Alex mentioned before. You are scared by fears. You cannot do that. You just blind yourself with those sittings, and you do the best that you can, because self-realization always belong to yourself. It's not for the outside environment. That's my thought. And in terms of the sitting part.
Nice example, real world story. Vince.
Okay, yeah. So again, I'm not the best person to share advice here because I haven't really experienced or haven't really broken any ceilings. So I'm not so qualified to speak here. But I want to share that there could be ceilings here and there, no matter it's in China or in here or anywhere. But if you find there is ceilings, you just go somewhere else, find a better place to excel, to grow. So don't generalize. I agree with everyone. Don't generalize. It could be this firm you have ceilings because this is a human world. Each company has different cultures, have different structures, and so on and so forth. So just be free. Yeah, dare to try and always find the best place to work with. That's my advice. Yeah.
Makes sense. Henry, I think you have broken your glass ceiling, right? You're working for yourself.
Well, working for yourself is very easy. Yeah, but in US, you can basically fund a new company with $1 investment. So that's nothing. I think I kind of agree with other panelists' point of view, and I also view this one as slightly differently. I think first of all, I agree with the panelists that I think glass ceiling is a mental barrier. Forget about it. There's no need for any feeling of glass ceiling. But when you feel that you might not be able to move up in the company, I think you need to make some self-assessment first. What's the reason that you cannot move up? Is it because your capability is not there yet? Or because the company was founded by somebody else, so that they have a closed cycle, so that you cannot move up. I think do some analysis, and if the reason is the latter, but just like Vince mentioned, feel free to go somewhere so that you can further your career. But if the reason was the former one, because you are not good enough, in that case, actually, I think it's very important to do some more self-development before you go other places. It's the key to break any ceiling is to develop yourself. If you are not strong enough, forget about don't just always think about moving up. Yeah.
I want to say that because Henry is the CEO of his company, he is the ceiling.
Yeah, so potentially if somebody is better than me, certainly within our company, if we cannot grow our staff, feel free to break the ceiling. And also if somebody is better than me, feel free, I will give the CEO to him. But in general, I think if you are in a company that you feel that you cannot further grow, feel free to go other places.
Yeah, so I'll just summarize. You have two choices when you face the glass ceiling. Either, as Vin said, just go somewhere else. Or second, like Henry, start your own company. Great. So thank you for the great discussion. Now we come to a 5-minute break. So we'll be back shortly at about 11 o'clock.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. All right, guys, we're back. Thanks for staying with us. And after this nice break, we're going to start our last session, or the last third of the event, in which we'll share 2 stories and we'll have 2 company showcases. So I'm happy to welcome Mara Ritsky, who's the Associate Director of Human Resources, to introduce Pharmaron Clinical. So Mara, we're happy to hear from you.
Hi, thank you all for having me today. It's a pleasure to be here. I work for Pharmaron. I've been with Pharmaron since 2017. I've been in human resources for 20 years, and I'm happy to be here to represent Pharmaron and to discuss a little bit about what we do. To share a little bit about myself, I am first and foremost a mom, a wife, a sister, a daughter, and I listed here human resources because Pharmaron allows me to sort of focus on my philosophy of being in human resources, which is, when we think about resources, we're always talking about people, but reality is they're humans first. And I love that about Pharmaron. They really do put employees first, and I get to practice that active interaction with employees and their development. And we talked a little bit about glass ceilings a little bit earlier. Employees often come to me with those struggles, and I like to ask them questions that really ask them, well, what do you want to do? What are you good at? And that employee engagement and counseling and pushing them a little bit further to work through conflicts or to overcome some type of problem, or to ask me, how do I get this training and be invested to grow? These are the things that I get to do on a daily basis, and I really like that about Pharmaron. Pharmaron is a large global company that was founded in 2014. We're currently about 11,000 employees today. In 2014, believe it or not, they were founded in Kentucky, of all places, but grew in China, and in about 2016 is when they spanned out from China. They were about between 7,000 and 8,000 employees at the time, and they acquired a company in the UK for radio-labeled sciences. In 2017, acquired our phase 1 clinical trial unit in Baltimore, Maryland, and they also acquired an advanced bioanalytical sciences laboratory in Germantown. And all of these facilities come together, and they have been growing quite significantly and doing very, very well. The company recently also acquired another company called Absorption Systems, which is in preclinical. They have offices in Boston, in San Diego, and also right outside of Philadelphia. And we also have acquired another company in Liverpool in the UK. So rapidly growing from an acquisition perspective and also organically. One of the 2 facilities I'll be focusing on today are in that Baltimore, Maryland office, which is our early phase clinical trial facility, and the advanced bioanalysis facility. These 2 companies work very closely together and also partner with our UK team for radio-labeled sciences. The phase 1 unit specializes in C14 studies, and it's a very exciting time as we work together to connect what it is to be that global company and to work from Baltimore to Germantown, and to see the type of exciting studies that we get to bring on. It's a very unique and exciting place to work. Can I get the next slide? There we go. I talked a little bit about this just to kind of show how the company has grown. These are some of our where we are located and how we've spanned out through the years. As you can see, there are 8 Chinese sites. There's actually 4 UK sites. As I mentioned, the last acquisition we just had is not listed here. And then we also have the US sites. The next slide, please. This just gives a little bit of how all the services that we offer as a company. Pharmaron's goal is to provide the full spectrum of services within the pharmaceutical research and development area. So we are a very large CRO looking to go stem to stern and to bring in all that research and development processes. We recently are growing into the biologics space, so that's very exciting, and that's come with the absorption team as well. So the clinical development and the biologic space are fairly new in the grand scheme of the timeline of PharmaRun, but we're very excited to have them on board, and that is also rapidly growing very quickly. Next slide, please. So this is our, wanted to focus on our clinical services that we're providing, just to give you an idea. This is certainly our phase 1 unit in Baltimore. We provide phase 1 safety studies, and as I mentioned, we're specializing in that C14 ADME space, and that partners with our Germantown team as well. We are always looking for really strong team members. We're beginning to grow also a little bit into the later phase, more oncology focused as well, but our phase 1 unit is primarily all phase 2. We take on many studies. We have a very large team of both clinical, laboratory, and PM and BD development services, and we're always looking for good talent. The Baltimore office is located, in case you're not familiar with the Baltimore area, we're partner very much with the University of Maryland, and we're actually on their bio campus, the Biopark campus for University of Maryland. Next slide. And this is addressing our bioanalytical lab in the Germantown office. So the Baltimore, they're only about an hour apart. The Baltimore office and the Germantown team, they work very closely together on our radio-labeled clinical trial studies. They were established in 2018, and PharmaRun acquired them in 2017, as I mentioned. They're a very exciting space to be in. They were 13 people big when PharmaRun acquired them, and now they're close to 50. Their expansion has been very, very welcomed, and they started out just providing that AMS service, which is accelerated mass spectrometry, but they added on 18,000 square feet of laboratory space, invested in a large molecule bioanalysis, small molecule bioanalysis, and they're currently revamping the entire AMS lab also and adding on biomarkers as well. And they have a brand new ADME lab as well. So that investment in PharmaRun has facilitated their growth, and they've rapidly grown in an organic manner. Next slide, please. Very good. So I wanted to talk a little bit about our culture, and I tapped into this a little bit when I talked about myself. PharmaRun is very much about putting employees first. Their entire philosophy is that if employees are happy, then your clients will be happy because your employees will be engaged. And they are very, very big into that. As a human resource professional, it says a lot to me when an employer looks at me, who is human resources, and says, make sure we're investing in those people. That's a very positive message. It's not a message that all companies provide. We do provide extensive tuition reimbursement. We also provide constant, I call it career mobility, where we are talking to managers, from manager to manager, about what are the strengths of your team and are they better utilized in another team if they're not quite successful. One of the things that I like the most about PharmaRun is that we might take somebody who isn't performing quite where we want them to be and really ask ourselves and ask them, what do you want to do and where are your strengths? And in those strengths, we have been successful in not putting somebody on a PIP and then maybe terminating them if it's not going well. We've been a lot more successful moving people around and utilizing them at their skill level, and they have thrived in that. So I'm glad to say that. I'm really proud of that because it's something company we are due unless they are very invested in our quality team, and HR partners very closely with the quality team to begin and develop employee training and development so that continuous growth is there. They are an employees first and a client-centered company. I have to say that, and they practice this both in China and in the US and in the UK. So I'm proud to be a part of that. Next slide. So we have a couple of of positions that are our top priorities. We actually have over 35 positions available. I do encourage you to go on to LinkedIn. If you click on to apply to any of the jobs, that will actually take you to our career center, and you can follow us and join our talent community. The opportunity to do that you would fill out a profile, and when we post a job, you'll be notified, and you can even put in a skill set, and it will notify you if based off the information you've entered that you would be a good match. But these are our top critical needs right now in the Baltimore area. We are looking for senior level project managers, particularly if you have experience in phase 1 or phase 2. Or if you have any type of ADME or radio labeled experience in managing those studies. We're also always, this is never not a need, we're always looking for clinical research nurses. I speak to a lot of nurses who've been in hospital environment. Research nursing is a very different environment, and I find people who come from hospitals find it refreshing. It's definitely not a patient-centered. Obviously, it's just a different focus as you're more focused on the protocol of the study and the quality and the data management. But it is a very rewarding, and a lot of our nurses who are maybe particularly after COVID, a little bit tired of being in a hospital environment are welcoming that research phase. We're also often looking for clinical research coordinators. Our clinical research coordinators have a lot of exposure to all of our departments, and they're basically that pivot point between all of the departments, the lab, the clinic, the medical staff, our PIs, and our doctors and physician assistants to ensure that the entire study is moving along. And we're also in the need of medical laboratory technicians to work in our labs. We're always, in Germantown, we're always looking for scientists of all levels. We are certainly looking for senior level scientists. It's a little bit difficult to find anyone who has experience in the ADME space, but we are very, very open to teaching in that space because it is a very unique field. And we're always looking for quality professionals as well. As I said, we're always focused in quality, and we're always looking to grow, and we have quality people assigned to each lab. So that can get quite burdensome. So we're always looking for quality professionals to grow in that bioanalytical space specifically. Any questions?
Yeah, great timing. Thank you, Mara, for the introduction.
Yes, you're very welcome.
Now, let's move to the next item on our agenda. It comes from Jane Pham, founder and CEO of Polaris Strategic Partners. Jane has 25 years of rich and unique experience across disciplines in global clinical drug development, life science research, and healthcare practice. A physician by training, Jane is an industry management leader and a practicing entrepreneur. Let's welcome Jane to talk about innovations in accelerating cross-border clinical development and operations in the US and China. Jane.
Thank you, Ron. Thanks for a very nice introduction. First of all, just a quick check. Can everybody hear my voice?
Yep.
Great. Thank you. So my talk is about the working in clinical research and development. And this morning, we have a wonderful panel around the panel 1, panel 2, all talk about what's going on in the life science and also biopharmaceutical industry and how that impact our career. So my specific talk, we're going to focus on clinical development and clinical trial management. Next slide, please, Ron. When we look at our career, I totally agree with many panels talked about at the panel 1 and 2, our passion, our interest, what we good at. Also very important, I would say that we need to look at the big trend of our the time. There is a very good Chinese saying mentioned that if you are at the right tide, and then even for the pigs, you can fly up. All right. So when we're looking at our career, definitely that have to look at what is the big trendings in the next, the 5 to 10 years that can have a significant impact on our career. Now, when we look back at our 2020, definitely I see this COVID-19 pandemic has significant impact in life science and biopharmaceutical industry and also related to the clinical trial career development that I'm going to talk about. So from the last year, I'd say pandemic is absolutely a tragedy, but also fortunately, it is so far one of the best public awareness and education to all of us about the drug development and also about clinical trial. Before that, I was in these global biopharmaceutical industry, clinical development for more than 20 years. We tried very hard to educate the public about what is clinical trial and what's the right way to do clinical development. It was not as effective as the COVID-19. So first that we look at the vaccine development that's so rapidly within the the less than 1 year from the lab and get into the body of human. Second of all, we see that to develop the good the medicine, it's not just the one country, one region's effort. It is actually multiple country collaboration. Especially the largest the pharmaceutical market, United States, and the second largest pharmaceutical market, China, that the close collaboration between US and China is also contribute to lots of the new medicine development, which is also impacting a lot of us. I believe that many of us that originally have, educated in China came to the States and any other country to got, our advanced education and then start working in the life science. Now, during the vaccine development, we also see the digital health innovation. Doing the clinical development today is no longer like we do that the clinical trial 20 and 15 years ago. Pretty much it's very, on the paper, the old traditional way. There are many digital innovations being used and also that contribute to the discovery of the new medicine. Next slide, please. So if we're looking at the specific US and China biopharma, the development, we are at least right now at, I call the Alliance, the 201. And in this space, what we see is more and more China-based the biotech company going global. And we have a wonderful example today on speakers from the IMED and many other companies. They also have the offices in the United States, in China, and any other countries. So collectively, these are the new type of the biotech companies that contribute a lot into today's the drug clinical development. Next slide, please. And this will going to have dramatic impact on our career choice. So I look at the data from clinicaltrial.gov from the 2015 to September of last year. As you can see that if I only looking at the phase 1 and the phase 2 clinical trials, coming from those China-based the biotech companies, it's rapidly growing. And what does this mean is that many companies are looking for talents, especially when they get into clinical development stage. They are looking for talents that they have the more experience, manage their clinical pipeline, their clinical studies, and also that's getting to the BD licensing, license out discussion. Next slide, please. So what it actually looks like when we get into clinical development stage. This is a pretty standard of the diagram you're going to see. Typically in pharmaceutical, the life science, the compound move from the preclinical, the discovery, get into the clinical stage. They were going to go through very intensive from phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, get approval, and then go to the, the market. However, as I mentioned that lots of breakthrough in the biotech discovery, especially in oncology, and lots of breakthrough in digital innovation. The separation between each of these gets, blurred, and many studies that actually expanded on the phase 1 and it goes through the breakthrough. And so all of this is that it has very positive impact in terms of the career path in clinical development. Next slide, please. So I use this very, very simple slide to illustrate what my daily work look like in clinical research and development. The diagram shown here is to show you very simple steps. When the compound, especially if we do clinical trial in the United States, past the US IND, goes to clinical trial phase. It starts with study planning. So what do we do during study planning? Typically, the sponsors, also the CROs, they were going to work together. The very first thing, they're going to work together around the protocol design. Make sure that this scientific experiment has a very strong scientific base, and it is also feasible and doable. Okay? And another the important aspect during study planning is to look at the patient population. Now, and also looking at study, the budget and planning, the contract. Then we're going to move to the study, the startup. During the startup, and lots of the logistic execution of the planning elements you're going to look at, you're going to work on. That's including, which the testing lab you're going to choose, which site set investigator you're going to choose, collaborate, and then the IRB you have to go through to get approval. All of these things are going to happen. And then as we move to study conduct. Now, during the study conduct, the primarily focus, especially for the US and or IND trial, you're going to focus on the monitoring of clinical trial based upon ICH and FDA GCP guidelines. I have to emphasize, especially for many folks that come from the preclinical scientific research and discovery, when you get to clinical stage, regulations is very, very important. Clinical trial is a highly regulated project. So with everything we do, we have to follow the ICH and FDA, the GCP regulation. Make sure that the data is, collecting the right way, and then we want to minimize any the safety concern to our patient and also the public health. And after that, once you collect the data, you monitor the clinical trial, and then you're going to do analysis, and then you come to the conclusion, and then decided if your trial will going to achieve any hypothesis, meaning that if you achieve that's your primary endpoint or secondary endpoint or not. And then we go to the study, the closeout. Okay. Now, during the typical, very lengthy clinical trial, that's a process. If you work with a sponsor, the biopharmaceutical sponsor, you are going to have constantly interact with many players. For example, the CROs, clinical trial site investigators, and regulatory agency, and any other trial service providers. So overall, that in the clinical development and the trial process, it is much more complex a project that just this typical the scientific research, the project you would do in the lab. Next slide, please. Now, so many of the friends that I have, the luck to get to know, asked me about if that I'm going to transition from preclinical research to clinical development, what are the essential skill sets and the knowledge I need to have? Now, the layout of this simple slide is that, first of all, if you're coming from scientific research background, you have very good foundation. You have good science background, which is very critical to get into clinical development and the clinical trial management. You have a very strong research skill. And then also you have analytical skill. These three things are also very important when you move your career from from discovery research to clinical research and development. Now, however, there are new skills and knowledge you have to have. And this included clinical project management. You need to understand the ICH, FDA, GCP regulations. And you also need to have very good communication skills and interpersonal skill plus business savvy skill, right? Now, next slide, please. So now, depending upon your background, if you have the MD education or non-MD education, there are plenty of the career track you can pursue in clinical development. For example, if you can work as a study physician, that's the clinical development track, or you can focus on clinical operation and management. Typically, you will see the job is clinical trial management, and then or the pipeline management, or the digital clinical track, as I mentioned, that today is the digital innovation, or as entrepreneur. I have to see that these different development tracks that could be clearly defined and then separated when you go to work with a very big, for example, international biopharmaceutical companies. But typically, for growing startup biotech companies, one person plays different role. So you could actually mix with all these skills within one person. Next slide, please. So this is the last slide. And I see that because of the big trend we have seen at the beginning, it's a high demand right now for the clinical development and the trial management, the talents today. That especially that's for the folks with a strong science background, but understand the US and China both culture. And then can work and then communicate with many stakeholders, and that's from the two major pharmaceutical markets. I think it's fortunately that collaborate with a couple of the friends who have the passion about this career. We were going to launch our clinical career training series for scientists. So if you are interested about career switch, especially to gain the knowledge about clinical trial, that's management, GCP, and then career path, the switch, please feel free and then contact me. And we're happy to help everyone achieve their goal. Thank you.
Thank you, Jen. I'm not the only one who looks at what you're saying and just feels good to see so much energy and intelligence and effort going into cross-border medical development. I mean, it's not even a national or political thing; it's a human thing, and it makes me feel good to see all this. And it's a lot of what we're about here at SAPA. All right, I'm going to transition us into our next speaker, who is Mercy Radhigupta, who is head of global business from G&G Capital. I know Mercy as well on a business level, and she's a great person. And she's going to give a talk about G&G. So welcome, Mercy, and we're glad to have you. Mercy, if you can hear me, you might be on mute. Oh.
Yeah, I was. Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
Okay, perfect. Thank you to everybody who's spoken before me. I really enjoyed the conversations on the growth mindset as well as shattering glass ceilings. And thank you guys for organizing this amazing event. It's my pleasure to introduce myself and to introduce our firm. So I'm the head of global business at G&G Capital. Prior to joining G&G Capital, I was with an institutional investor in Botswana. So I'm actually in Southern Africa right now. And prior to that, I was pursuing my MBA and CFA in Hopkins. And prior to that, I was at Georgetown. So we are a healthcare financial advisory. We're based out of Beijing. And we offer fundraising, global business development, and M&A services. And our clients are pharma, biotech, and medtech companies. We have a team of over 10 with over 65 years of combined experience across medtech, biotech, pharmaceutical management, and investment management industries. And we help companies find strategic targets for licensing, for acquisition, and we drive both processes until deal close. So we, like I said, we fundraise for biotech and medtech clients. Our typical raise size is between 20 million and 500 million US dollars at any stage from A to IPO to post IPO. And a little bit of company propaganda, but a deal cycle is competitively short, typically 3 months. And so far this year, we've raised over $1 billion for our clients, which we're very proud of. Next slide, please. So our business is quite client-oriented. We understand that R&D is costly, funding is challenging, it diverts management's attention from corporations, and finding strategic partners to speed up milestone achievement can even be more challenging. We also recognize that early-stage biotech and medtech companies need to diversify their sources of funding through licensing, and that M&A can actually help our clients enhance their pipelines. And so we basically exist to help our clients solve these challenges and to position themselves to capture market opportunities across the healthcare vertical in the US and in China. And we find market opportunities are supported by the aging population globally, the $1 trillion healthcare market in China, significant VC and PE activity cross borders between both countries and in the region, and of course the regulatory changes that have spurred the biotech boom on the Hong Kong exchange. And so our role is to help our clients position themselves to capture these opportunities early and to secure the funding that they need to advance rapidly. Next slide, please. Thank you. So to help our clients achieve their funding goals, we provide access to blue chip healthcare investors who also lead as strategic investors to provide not just money, but smart money. We manage all fundraising related admin and operations, which can be a lot if you're raising a lot of money for R&D. Below are some of the investors we've worked with who all provide more than just funds. Again, they provide expertise across different stages. They know the markets pretty well in China and the US, and they have significant experience advising companies in their portfolios. And on the right are some of the deals that we've worked on this past year. They span from different sectors, right? For example, Insilico just announced the closing of their C round, around $255 million, which we're proud to have helped raise. I think the diversity of sectors and investors and rounds, it speaks to our focus on research, on the clients, and on the strong network and relationships that we have with investors and industry stakeholders, because again, we're just a team of 10, right? Next slide, please. So we are a full service firm for all our clients. We handle research, market analysis, pipeline and company valuation, regulatory advice, especially for US firms entering the Chinese market, and due diligence preparations and coordinations for our global clients. Yeah, next slide, please. Thanks. This is an exhibit of our process from the first month to the third, typically 3 months. Milestones and deliverables are on the right, from onboarding, roadshows, legal, execution to completion. So we work closely again with our clients and with investors at every step of the way. We build strong relationships with both. And one thing that we're focused on is ensuring that our investors and our founders have good and strong relationships so that our investors are able to continue supporting the company as they progress through the different preclinical and clinical stages that they need funding for. And all of that is based on relationships, right? So that's a huge part of what we do. Next slide, please. So we're currently seeking project managers and associates. So because we manage different relationships with different stakeholders, networking is a huge part of what has made our firm successful. Having relationships with institutional investors over the years has allowed us to create not just a network of capital, but a network of expertise. And we're working on building an ecosystem of founders so we can collaborate early. I think everyone in the room can agree that collaboration is one of the key factors driving our industry growth, right? And our collaboration style is flat because we're a small team. So you can gain experience across a wide variety of areas, right? So if you believe that this is something that you would be interested in, please contact us. Next slide, please. So yeah, to reach out to myself or our offices, you can take a snapshot of my email, or you can visit our website for more information, or reach out to the SAPA team if you've missed our contacts. Thank you, Rong, and thank you, James.
Great. Thank you, Mercy, for the great introduction. So interesting that maybe we should talk about what are the opportunities for me in the company. Just kidding.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay.
Wrong. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Okay, now last but not the least, we welcome Jason Ye, Director of China-US Cross-Border Deals from PwC. Jason is the lead director of the US-China Cross-Border Deals Consulting Service in PwC. He has over 15 years merger and acquisition experience both in the US and mainland China. Additionally, he has been a SAPA member since 2017. Let's welcome Jason to share his career in the consulting world. Jason.
Thank you, Ro. Can you hear me clearly?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, since I'm the last speaker of the today's event, so I will try to keep it short, so everyone will have time to ask your questions. So all the speakers and the panelists, these are industry veterans, right? They are very seasoned. So I guarantee you that they won't share their secret recipe with you unless you ask questions. So don't hesitate. I encourage everyone, raise your questions in the following networking events. So maybe 1 more minute for me for my background. So you can tell my background will be a little bit different from most of the guys here. I started with in PwC as a CPA, as you can tell. I'm a public accountant. Basically, what I do is help the company do the annual financial report and do the IPO audit. That's my first part of my career. And eventually, I moved to the consulting world. I'm more doing the deals, acquisitions, still focusing on the financial part. Basically, what I do is acting as a FA role or financial advisor role, help the clients with the budgeting, FP&A, and due diligence of the assets or companies they are looking at, help them to investigate, and giving them comments about when they do the acquisitions, and also help the company when they are trying to fundraising, IPO, or something you're probably hear a lot now is the SPAC, right? They want to work with the SPAC. So we help them build up their profile, help them to think about their more like a consulting, right? Help them build up their strategy and eventually show themselves and talk to the investors. So that's my job. I'm not just work for PLS client or pharma life science client. My client is like, I work for Belgium, Ending Pharma, Human Well, and Shandong Weigao. These are my pharma life science clients, but I also work on some commercial consumer products, industrial products. So basically, as an M&A advisor, it's really hard just focusing on one sectors, but you have to be in general. That's what I do, right? So since 2018, I was appointed as the lead director for China-US cross-border transactions for PwC US. So yeah, I will share something with you how I got this position, but that's pretty important. One of the takeaway I want to share. So so today I will not share a lot of things, nothing about technical or academic, because I'm not really a PhD or anything related to research or marketing. So I will share something more, I would say soft skill or social skill when you move to a consulting world, especially in the US. So the first point I want to say is also recall what Freddie Yuan said early today, is about curious. Right? Try to be curious. That's very, very important in a consulting world, that every day you are facing new things. You're facing new challenge, new clients, new projects, and even new technical areas, right? Although you will say, I'm in pharma life science, but every day the task is different. So you have to be curious for everything. That's super important in consulting world. I think it's also very important in corporate world, especially you are doing some research and developing new things. Curiosity is very, very important, and keeping in mind that you are ready to take about challenge every day. That's the first thing. And networking is also very important, as I think also mentioned by several speakers and panelists, right? Especially that's super important in the US, that people get connected. Not maybe in China, the relationship, how we get relationship is more through introduction and friends. But here, I think the professional way is more social networking, participating in events like this, right? And also, if after COVID go over, I think there will be a lot of offline, in-person events. So highly encourage everyone try to participate and know people, talk to people. Talk to people is very important. You don't need to talk anything about technical, but just learn from others what they are doing, and share your stories as well, right? It might create some new topics when the conversation goes on. And the second point I want to share is in a consulting world, you have to be dedicated, or in other words, flexible. It's especially true here, and you will tell that because I work in China before, so that's maybe something I learned. It's just personal, not maybe general, but I feel in China, when you become you move up, right, to a higher level, sometimes, especially if you work for a large corporation in China, when you move up, it seems like your lifestyle getting better, right? You have more your own time, and you can delegate a lot of things to your teams and junior staff, and you can just participate in meetings only, right? And give some, right, a few comments. That's it. But here in the States, especially in the consulting world, actually, when you move on, your life is more screwed. You have the encore every day or every minute. At least for me, it's maybe 16 hours a day. But I know some of my boss, they are 24 hours. Especially if if a deal is closing, then you have to be standby encore. If there's something you need your comments, you have to respond in an hour. Or my boss told me it's 24 hours, but I try to do 3 hours. So delegation, flexibility is very important to be a consultant here. But I feel that's to a certain level, right? If eventually you are become an industry or a sector expert, people will give a lot of credit to your time, and that they know when to bother you. But as when you start your career, just get prepared. You have to be flexible here. And the third point, I think other panelists also, I think Wayne mentioned that, is be yourself. That's true, right? If you are pretended to be someone else, that's not you. And in a culture in the US, I feel it's very important to there is a brand, right? Self-brand. You have to be think about what brand you want to build up yourself and let people know you. So the branding and the self, be yourself is very important. The next point is, I feel it's very important. I think I want to point it out is the self-awareness. That thing my coach told me on, I think it's very true. I didn't realize previously, is don't just restrict yourself, think, oh, I'm doing a good job. My boss like me, and my team supports me, and don't get any feedback from others. I think self-awareness means you have to talk to people, to your coworkers, to your team, to your boss, to your coach, even talk to someone in your industry, right? Share wisdom, what you are doing, and try to see, okay, is my achievement good enough, or what else, right? I need to improve myself, as well as what's the new areas, like especially like one of the example is SPAC. It's popping up 2 years ago, or maybe 1.5 years ago. That thing I never know about it before, because it's very small capital. But once it become hot topic, probably you should spend some time to study yourself and get familiar with it. And yeah, that's true, right? All the clients now are asking us about SPAC, how they work with a SPAC or how they talk with a SPAC. And on the other side, SPAC want to find some assets. So yeah, that's something. Be self-aware and know where you want to learn and you want to improve yourself. Not last but not least, I think as I was born in China and educated in China, and working in US is not easy. I would say it's not easy. No one says it's an easy job, especially when you give a speech or a lecture. So get prepared. We have to spend double time or triple time in preparation, our US folks. So make sure you have a list of the points you want to talk about in your meeting, and stick to that and make your points clear. Otherwise, it won't be if we talk wherever we want to talk, then people will get lost, and that's not good for a foreign speaker, right? Especially English is not our first language. So in summary, I think a few takeaways for you guys is first, be curious about the technical things or academic things, but also the new stuff in your sector or area. Second is be dedicated, flexible if you are interested in a consulting world. I think that's something you have to be prepared. It will be with you for a long time. It's not just for the first few years, but maybe until you before your retirement. And third is be yourself, and think about your branding, right? Maybe not in your first year or second year of your career, but when you move on, definitely think about what kind of brand you want to market yourself. Fourth is be self-awareness. That's very important. You know what's your pros and cons in your team, and how you move forward, right? What's the areas you need to make up, and what's the area your strength is, and you want to make sure everyone knows. The last thing is get prepared for everything: speech, presentations, even your papers, right? Make sure you do your best job. So so I guess if anyone that interested in consulting, know more about me or the consulting world experience, feel free to connect me. You can find me on LinkedIn. I go with Jason Ye, PwC. I think you can search me and add me there, and happy to talk more. At last, I think I just, on behalf of all the speakers and panelists, and all the audience, I want to thank today's the hosts and the organization committees. Fantastic job. We have a great show out today. Good job. Thank you, guys. Back to you, Ron and or James.
Thank you much. You had great thoughts, very comprehensive, and it was very well organized. Organized in a way that I think only a consultant could organize it. So thank you very much for doing that. And I think about this as someone who came from the U.S. and does business a lot in China. These mechanics are certainly very important, but one thing I found is that underneath them, people are kind of the same everywhere in terms of what we like, what we don't like. It's just a matter of filtering down to those human emotions. So I think these types of discussions and events are great to sort of unlock how do we get there in each culture. So I learned a lot from this event, and I hope everyone in the audience learned a lot from this event. And if anyone watching has a question for Jason or for anyone else, don't disappear. We're not done yet. We have a networking and Q&A session that will last until 12:30 Eastern U.S. time, which we'll get to right now. And so feel free just to ask your questions in that chat. And I think Rong, is there like a transition or a link they can go to get to that session? Or is it just in the chat box here?
Just in the chat box.
Okay, great. Yeah, so I'm old and low tech, so it's easier than I thought. So right in the chat box, you don't even have to go anywhere. Just ask your questions, and we're all happy to reply.
Yeah, maybe when people are thinking about their questions, I have a question for you, Jason. What's the most challenging part of your work? Well, it seems like the long hours is not the most challenging part to you. So what are the other parts?
You mean more?
You find challenging
technically, or it's more just general as a consultant?
Yeah, generally or technically. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's my second point. Have to be flexible. That's the toughest part to my family. My wife doesn't. She's super unhappy about it in the first 5 years. I will disappear in the middle of a party. I cannot commit weekend events. Maybe two weeks later, I just say I cannot commit anything until the Friday before ends. So yeah, it's a consulting world is tough. You have to be flexible. If there's any needs of you have to work, and unfortunately, the client is very tough. Most of the consultants, and they have a very tight timeline. And especially when I'm doing M&A, right, merger and acquisition, we only have, like Mercy said, usually the life cycle of our M&A is only a month, mostly 3 months. So you have to get your job done. In a week, 2 weeks, there's defined timeline. You have to finish all the jobs by then. There's no excuse of unfulfilled, right? You have to complete. So yeah, I think that's the toughest part. I get over it. I get used to it. But anyone just new to the industry, yeah, that's one of the key things. I think do a good job, but you have to do it in time, finishing. If it's late, then it does no good.
Gotcha. Makes sense. I have the same feeling because I also work for the merger and acquisition due diligence valuation projects. They're very exciting. I love them. It's just the time demanding is it's a lot.
Yeah.
Okay, I see some questions. James, do you want to read those questions to the audience? So and then we can see who can, or which panelist or speaker can answer that.
Sure. One comes saying, I found a lot of Chinese biotech recruiting in the U.S. recently. How do you think about it? And are there any good opportunities for scientists to join? And I think we heard from some of those recently on our panel. And I'm not sure who wants to reply to that, but I think certainly we can get some replies going on that one.
James, I can respond. I think there's a lot of opportunities for Chinese biotech recruiting in the US. We work with a lot of clients that ask us to help them build their teams, and they're looking for global expertise all over the world and also in the US. And I think that going forward, we have a bigger role to play collaborating with universities and ensuring that that recruiting message is global, right? I think that actually that's something COVID has played a role in ensuring that recruiting and career offices, a lot of students and graduates weren't necessarily able to, participate in the labor market in the US. And I think a lot of universities had to adapt. And so we saw a lot of global recruiting just spiraling or growing exponentially. And so I think we've heard a lot of clients also asking us, can you help us recruit globally? Can you help us find talent? in a lot of innovative fields. And so I think that those opportunities are out there, and platforms like SAPA are a great way to network with people and find out more about those opportunities.
And this is Wayne. So I think, Claire and Henry, they are actively recruiting, right, on behalf of their own companies, Chinese biotech. So they're probably more qualified to answer this question. But from my personal observation, I've witnessed exceptional career growth for people, who have some experience in the U.S. who later joined a Chinese biotech or Chinese CRO. They can usually grow faster than they would have been if they were to stick with their U.S. employer. So I would say if you're into it, then definitely those are all great opportunities. Going back to the culture difference, I don't think it's mostly culture difference that cause the differential career growth in a Chinese biotech versus in a U.S. company. It mostly have to do with the fact that a lot of Chinese biotechs, they have startups here in the U.S. So there are more opportunities and there are more responsibilities for individuals to take. I think that's the main reason. Another observation I have, and this is irrelevant to the question here, is that most of the time, Chinese biotechs, they like people with clinical background, because that's what people do, right? Early stage biotechs, they spend 90% of our time and energy in running clinical trials. However, recently I've also seen job postings from Chinese biotechs in commercial stage. That's my cup of tea. That's my neck of the woods, right? So there are Beijing and HUTCHMED specifically. They want to market their own drugs here in the U.S. Because U.S. and EU and Japan, these three markets account for 95% of the global profits of innovative pharmaceutical companies. So it's a very, very lucrative market that Chinese biotechs are just dipping their toes in.
Yeah, Lily, this is Jason. I think just add to your point, I'm not in the corporate, in the industry, but from consulting, or what I learned from my client is there's differences. And I'm not sure what level you are on, right? If you are leading a project or you are more execution, doing projects, but just from cultural perspective, I'm not commenting on the academic way, right? But more on the cultural perspective. What I experienced is Chinese biotech company, they are more, because they know commercialization is so important. So you will feel more pressure on your project's progress. The boss or the money will chasing you all the time. See, you have to be on track, and there's the pressure wise, it will be harder. But I think in China, I guess your results, if you just need examples or you need testers, that's easy to get, and you may get your research or your project will move much faster in China if you're taking a project back, right? It will move more faster in China than the States. The States, you have a lot of regulators or companies, risk management team. You want to make sure you're not stepping. You make all the steps right? So it's a swap, and it has to be case by case. So there's no right or wrong, but I think as a Chinese, I assume you are Chinese, you can take advantage of, you have the choice to work for a Chinese biotech because you can speak Chinese and you probably know the culture. I think it's an advantage to you that you can choose from US biotech and Chinese biotech. But get prepared. All the companies are different, and it really depends on your level. Are you leading a project or not? And what's the achievement, or what's your career goal? I'll stop here.
I also want to add on. I saw some of these questions coming from chat. First of all is compensation. Now, right now, as I mentioned, the phase especially across China, US biopharma development, it's getting to the new age. Where this new age and more China-based biotech companies come to US, set up their office, operation, and run clinical trial. Many of these companies that's moved actually downstream from preclinical discovery company to clinical stage company. So what we mean by clinical stage, meaning that they have a compound, they have to test in human beings, they have to run clinical trials. Now, in general speaking, in the United States, especially lots of folks that if you are, study here, work here in the United States, clinical development that's in biopharma industry is highly paid. It doesn't matter that's which track you are. It's a high demanding that's a field because biotech companies, that's especially with a China background, have to recognize that they also compete with many US and European biotech pharmaceutical companies that's based in United States. So the compensation-wise, what I have personally that's got to know, many Chinese biopharma companies' compensation that's offered to the position in US, it's pretty competitive to the compensation that I've seen from the typical international global that's biotech companies or pharmaceutical companies. There are differences. The primary, I think it's the difference I've seen is that number one is your work style and schedule. You have to be much more flexible. That's you need to work, if you're based in the United States, you have to work during the day, especially in the morning, or also work in the night because your colleagues in China, it's, wake up. They're going to work, that's their daytime. And so it's a number that's a work schedule. Second of all, you have to work very fast. Many of these biotech companies, as I mentioned, when you work in the area, you have to look at the big picture of the trend of our time. Majority right now, the biopharmaceutical companies at their early stage, the clinical development. And so company itself, from the business perspective, the maturity and then their experience to develop the clinical compound, there are still lots of room to grow. They are still learning. So it's very dynamic. A decision will be quickly made, and then they will change the decision. And so pace is very fast. It's probably typically I've seen it's much faster than the biotech companies or global pharmaceutical company in the United States and also in EU. So you have to expect that to work much faster pace, not actually like to work with a US the biotech company. Other things, I think it's especially in the clinical development and the clinical trial management, there are culture sensitivity areas. There are the same fundamental, the way of doing the business. However, the conducting the clinical trial is closely associated with a local, regional, that's a regulation and then the way to do business. This the difference, you may not see that, especially in the preclinical discovery, primarily scientific lab. It's the same thing like a natural science. 1 + 1 = 2. Base math goes to everywhere. It's the 1 + 1 = 2. However, if you conduct the clinical trial, that is, as I mentioned, you need have a very savvy business skill and project management skill. And that is very closely locally anchored, the skill. So the way how we work with China-based biotech company and also the way we do with the US clinical trial service providers in some of the areas are very much the different. That's something I think that's especially for bioculture talents, you actually need to grow and then strengthen that skill. So you can be a very good, bridge, a person to accelerate the both sides understanding and the way to do business. So I just want to add on this.
Yeah. Also, Jane, you talk more from like the research and development side. I'm thinking more generally. I also agree with you. I can see that like working for a U.S. company versus working for a Chinese company has been a topic on a lot of people's mind. Even for me, I thought about my future. When I think about my future career development, I was thinking like which like local Chinese company or a U.S. company. And I think the Chinese company are catching up a lot, or sometimes they even provide more a higher compensation compared with the U.S. companies. I actually just met with a friend yesterday. Sorry, what?
Unmute them. 他们在举手要说话。
Oh, okay, gotcha. Yeah. I even see, like I met with a friend yesterday. He works for a U.S. company for the past 6 years, and then recently joined a Chinese company based in the U.S. So I'm assuming that the compensation definitely is better. Otherwise, he wouldn't make the choice. So I can see that like a lot of the people are joining the Chinese companies in the U.S. and also it's not just in the U.S. It's also in China. A lot of my previous friends or colleagues, I see them in large scale moving from the multinational companies to the Chinese companies. I think compensations catching up from the Chinese companies is a big reason, but also I think it's the like just for us people working in the US, the cultural adaptability, or you have the same understanding. I think that can be a great plus for the career development, but also you're working with the same, working on the same culture. I think the like for the glass ceiling, if you work for the U.S. companies, sometimes there might be a glass ceiling there. That's just my thoughts. And John, I see that you want to say something.
Can you guys hear me?
Here we go. Thank you.
My name is Dan, and I am a second-year pharmacy student. I just want to ask what a pharmacist can do in pharmaceutical industry.
I think that's there are a lot you can do with a pharmaceutical background. I see that John is also want to add. Just to keep it short, you can be the scientist track within the research discovery, and also especially with the bigger company, they have the pipeline management. The management lead, you really like to see that the PhD background to lead the compound development. You can also join on the clinical development side, and even that's for commercial. For example, that's related to the medical science liaison. They also hire lots of the PharmD background. That's folks that's working the medical science field. And back to you, John.
Yeah, this unmuting thing is a bit of a challenging. Tian, would you mind to repeat a question again? Because I'm trying to answer them together. I'm
just saying I am a third-year pharmacy student. I just want to ask what can pharmacists do in the pharmaceutical industry?
Yeah, I'm trying to answer them together. Bit of echo what Jane mentioned early on. I agree with what she's saying, but maybe develop a bit further. I think a career choices and how to do the comparison, the U.S., China, this kind of thing is a very, very big topic. I'll share my thought with you. I think we're living in a very dynamic period. What I mean by that is what happened a few years ago, even a few months ago, may not be applicable in the next few months. So with that, we need to be very conscious to define what we want to do, not only from our personal desire. Early on, talking about my journey, that was back then. We're no longer living in that kind of a field, right? I mean, that kind of a time. So with the upcoming changing ecosystem, what I use the word dynamic rather neutrally. I'm not saying it's negative or positive. It is what it is. It does present a lot of opportunities on both sides. With the ongoing rapid changing of the demanding, and also with the geopolitical challenge as well, this is all real, right? And many of us are international student or a assignee here, the visa issue is also a practical consideration as well. So I'm not going to be undermine your personal challenges. Each one's different. However, I will share with you a few thoughts with you going through those many years. I think career overall is a marathon. It's not a sprint. That one is very, very important. So don't only looking for the next few stops. I've seen, the reason I'm saying don't look at the sprint, you have to see people like competing the next few short-term goal and assignment. You completely exhausted after you win the short-term goal. So one advice for everybody, and I was talking to Lily as well offline, is trying to focus yourself, put your vision as far as possible. As far as possible. None of us are God. We're human. We can't predict what's going on. But what we can do is to be vigilant, learning from the people who has a higher vantage point. Talk to people, not only your friend, try and develop people who have the wisdom, who have the vision. Jen is somebody I truly admire and also respect as an example, and a couple of other speakers as well. So borrow from their vision, standing on giant's shoulder would give you that vantage point. The second one I share with you regarding, the question was very real. I would say is, when you see the compensation, I would say the recent years, China developed so fast. Funding is almost just saying the money is not an issue, right? So the compensation itself between the Chinese company versus the Western company is getting not only competitive, sometimes they pay even more. I know the chief medical officer, for example, paid a lot more than the U.S. medical officer sometimes, even for a smaller company. So, but I want to bring a very important point is if you compare the compensation, don't only look at the money. I would say highly recommend you looking at a couple of other things. First of all, what's the risk and the stress going to bring into your life? Second of all, what the long-term development for you? So just because you can all of a sudden have a big title, switching simply from a scientist to a vice president, does not automatically make you an executive overnight, because it does take different competencies, different things for that. The third one is looking at the area that you are not familiar with. I'll give you that example. Many years ago, when I choosing the project management back then, I have no idea what it is, because all my friends are around the Chinese saying 数理化, right? The math and the physics and the chemistry, that's what we're good at. Therefore, my immediate surrounding friends are all doing this kind of a natural science. It doesn't mean they're bad. It's just we are cohorted into the area. We think that was the center of the universe. But in fact, the universe is so big. There's so many different opportunities in pharma company or elsewhere. My recommendation is going out on generally talking about the clinical, project management, operation, clinical in general was one of the biggest area. Back in my days when I doing my pharmaceutical science development, I thought, hey, formulation was the king of the world. It's important, but it's not, Charles is laughing at this. But back then, I truly believed in that. I thought, my professor was the best scientist in the world. What we're doing is so meaningful. I did not understand how important clinical is. So SAPA as an organization, all these years, we have a lot of natural scientists, in the biology, things like pharmacology, medicinal chemistry. We have a very much lacking of the representation, the clinical. The magic happens in where we do not understand. So back to you, Tian, your question as a pharmacy student, look further, looking at the future. Clinical is a very big untapped area. Still, it's not. They need a lot more scientists on that. And my final advice is people not only looking at the Chinese company, but if you can, trying to get into multinationals or to bigger consulting firm. That would give you some really good training. If you're going to do in a smaller minor leagues, you can only run that far. If you really want to finish a really good marathon, and also enjoy the marathon, not to be exhausted at the point, you need to have a completely different level of the competencies you need to develop. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, sir.
Good. So we have quite a few questions coming out. Let me just read them one by one. So we have one question from Mia. For people who are looking for jobs that don't have a biochemistry or pharma background, but do have a business background, what role can they play in the company? Jason, do you think you can answer this one?
He can't see
I guess I'm not the right one. If she or
yeah, she's thinking that she has a business background, but not really the science background. That's my understanding.
Yeah. So for consulting work, especially for the biotech, I feel you can't be a generalist. You have to have some chemical or biological background because a lot of the so-called diligence or research or consulting, right, we're doing on the science basis. So you have to know about the thing until you cannot do a general consulting. But you can focus on something if you want an interesting financial. Right? Every company will have a financial book, right? Beijing has now it's a listed company, not meaning everyone in Beijing is a scientist, right? There's a lot of lawyer can be a regulator, work for the regulation department. CPA can work for the finance or FP&A, right? And marketing. I guess it's a broad question, but it really depends on what's your expertise, what do you want to do, and if there is a position right for your background. I think that's my answer.
And I can add on top of that because I don't have a biochemistry or pharma clinical background. My college education was in material science. So I do believe there are positions for people with a business background. But you do have to know that a general business background is not super helpful. You have to either learn on a job or know that this will be one of your major limitations going into the job. I deal with a lot of people with business background in my daily consulting lives because I'm more on the commercial side. So positions like market access, super important. A lot of times are taken with people in business and with a clinical pharma background. Pricing and reimbursement is also super important. There's also a government policy team usually with every single big pharma. I work very closely with them. A lot of them do not have a pharmaceutical or clinical background at all. They came from either a public policy team, public policy background, or even marketing background, general marketing background. So you can start with commercial and then maybe go from there using that as your stepping stone.
Yeah, just add to Jason and Wei, and I think it's okay that you don't have the science background. Just try to find your advantage, and also if you're passionate about the industry, just keep learning. And one day you'll be more an expert than the people who have the background. Okay, next question from Wei and Zhang. What are the demands from the legal perspective for U.S.-China biopharma industry, for instance, IP, U.S.-China cross-border regulations, and this kind of stuff? I don't know if any of the panels or speakers have a legal background. Jason, does that touch cross-border? Does that touch your space a little bit?
Ron, are you referring to the IP question here?
Yeah.
That
or is it just too legal?
It's a very sensitive question, I guess. Yeah, I guess it's a lawyer question, but again, IP is super sensitive, especially in a current political environment. We have to do this in a deal, right? We have to do this very carefully. Make sure it doesn't trigger any of the scrutiny from the government, even if you do legally right. But sometimes some type of IP, if it's emergent technology, right? The CFIUS has a very it's a vague definition right now, but every case has to be evaluated by the lawyers, by the CFIUS experts. So moving IP, previously it's very ideal for tax planning. So we are talking about different things. It's not biotech, it's more tax planning, make sure how you save tax. But nowadays, it's not just money, your profit, but also your political risk. By even if you move, the government can revoke it, and you have to reverse it. It will cost you a lot of money. So it's a big topic. But if you're interested, probably can connect it, and I can find some lawyers. Maybe they are better position to answer this question.
Yeah, and we don't. I also know a few people who work in the legal space through SAPA-DC. So if you're interested, I can help you connect with them. Just at my WeChat on the QR scan. Okay, I'm just checking to see if we have more questions. I think that's all the questions we have. Any other questions coming up?
Wrong. I can add on to the previous question.
Sure.
I don't have a legal background as well, but it's a question we're getting a lot for both biotech companies and as well as investors. I think what's changed is that there's a lot of clarity that's being demanded, and that's clarity of strategy, like when, how, with whom, what is your exposure. There's also an interest in dual systems, independent intellectual property. Excuse me. Sorry. Sorry, I'm back.
No, it's a little bit glitchy. Yep.
I was just saying, there's a lot of what we're seeing is like dual systems that are kind of coming up, and an insistence on self-sufficiency, whether that's in the supply chain or where the intellectual property is based, or whether you're using a subsidiary model or a licensing model, and what is the actual exposure, right? And then there's also a requirement of more awareness of the policy environment, right? It's quite dynamic. Previously, I think different administrations relied on the WTO, and then there was a trade war, and then obviously the constantly changing consumer protection laws and data provisions, right? There's a lot more requirement for vigilance on that. So I think what is required is for everybody to be proactive. I do think there's also a lot of creativity and storytelling, like, right, what is a realistic risk and what is really sensational. I think that's an important and usually an upfront conversation to have. And then we're also seeing people and companies being proactive in terms of thinking about healthcare as like, a human good, and thinking about, let's not make healthcare geopolitical. Let's not make healthcare political. So there's also that kind of push where we see people actually leading the industry in cross-border collaboration despite geopolitical tensions. Yeah.
Thanks for sharing, Mercy.
Ron, also, I noticed there are a few non-Chinese speaking, just look at the names in the audience, and I'll share some words for them as well. So we're talking about different companies, and even the Chinese company. I found that nowadays the Chinese, so-called Chinese company in the U.S. sites and now recruiting a lot of non-Chinese people. That's a nice trend to have. So if you are not a Chinese-speaking person, if this kind of opportunity exists, they actually welcoming you to join them. So maybe there's some interesting local cultural, you feel like, hey, I don't speak Chinese, but if you work with them, they actually need, they're right there, Rasil. They will welcome you. Many of them looking for people like you to join. This is a very, in the US, there's a lot of good opportunity, diversity, inclusion kind of things, that the training is different. And they would love to have talents like you. So thank you.
Thanks, John. I'm just looking at the chat. Lei Cao have a question for pharmacy student who wants to find an MSL job. Would it be helpful to have clinical research experience or hospital working experience? So John and Ling both choose clinical research. Hope that answers your question.
Yes, I just as a reply to the chat. I think that's an excellent question. Yes, indeed. The answer is that if you can have a clinical research background or experience, also hospital that's usually in the US side, we could refer to as site working experience. It will going to benefit if you apply for those medical science liaison job. Because even today, as I mentioned, that the way we do clinical, the trial and also the overall product pipeline management has changed. Especially one of the changes, very close interaction between commercial and then the clinical research. Medical affairs, medical liaison job is sitting the biopharma's the commercial side. For the commercial today, they also run lots of the phase 4 observation study. And then the process is very similar that for the we call the typical clinical trial, phase 1, 2, 3, before that product is FDA approved. And then they hire people with those background to be the medical science liaison. So that's absolutely, for especially the pharmacy, the pharmacy background, you can add on that. You have actually a couple of, I call them the SAP job tracks you can explore within the medical affairs in biopharma industry.
And I also want to add on that because obviously I sit on the commercial side. I also used to work for a hospital, so I believe both are equally important because I think without a doubt, right, clinical research is exceptionally important. But for the hospital experience, a lot of the drugs are in-hospital drugs. For those used in inpatient environment, the reimbursement for those drugs are very different from those used in outpatient prescription drugs. So having hospital experience will help you navigate the complex bureaucratic structure of U.S. hospital, for example, P&T committees, right? Who are on those committees and how often do they meet and how do you get your drug onto their formulary? Because each hospital will have their own formulary. So I believe both are equally important.
Yeah, just to add to that, I think, both are good opportunities if you have both of them. Maybe just comparing, like maybe the brand, the manager, who is gonna, whether they will invest on you, and also maybe salary. Just do a total comparison. Okay.
So, if I may, there's another big topic talking about regarding specialist versus generalist. I think Jason providing his perspective, right? You need to have a specialty to stand on to be differentiated with somebody else. And that's a very, very valid point. What I'll share with you guys also need every single one of us asking ourselves, are we want to be a generalist or want a specialist? It's very difficult to want to be both, very difficult because we have a limited time, right? Ideally, you can do both. But if you give a choices, which one would you prefer? To me, over the years, I would share with you that to be a generalist means that you learn many things, almost something else, and know each to be dangerous enough. If you want a specialist, many like a PhD, so you were doing deeper and deeper to be the leading scientist or leading key opinion leader. That's a very, very different career trajectory direction. So my advice to you is look at yourself. What do you want to do? In general, in the many years later, actually right around the corner, right? 10 years will blow by just like that. So fast forward to think, 10 years later, who I want to be. That's usually pretty nice yardstick to see. 10 years give you enough time to do, but also give you enough time to practice. So this look back with the question about the clinical research and the hospital. This will remind me, if you work in the hospital setting, it will give you a very solid first line experience dealing with the patient, with the physician, with the nursing, with all the first hand experience of understanding the clinical trial in general, but that doesn't give you the clinical trial itself in the totality. So linking back, what I'm saying is looking back over the entire thing, similar if you were working in the lab day in, day out, doing the animal experiment, doing biology, it will make you a career scientist, but not make you a career leader or executive. So if you think it 10 years later, if you say, hey, I want to be chief this, chief that, vice president this and that, you need to be building from today to building your competency to look at it holistically, the bigger picture. Just because you have been in the hospital room, emergency room for 5 years does not make you overall visionary leader and things like that. So same in the lab. So I'm not saying anything wrong if you work in the lab now, you do anything, but just looking at the later on what you want to do is build that consciously of your career is what really matters. Thank you.
Thanks.
And I see.
Go ahead.
Sorry, Ron. I see there's a question from Lu Huang asking about what is the normal career path for clinical research project manager and how to best prepare for that. Again, I think it's on top of John just mentioned. You can, develop, because clinical research project management by itself, it's also specialized career track. You can go down very deep to be expert. And then that can be, for example, head to clinical research or clinical operation head within a biopharmaceutical company. You can also depend upon your interest and also that opportunity. You can expand on that. That's, even that if you like to pursue entrepreneurship, you can even join the clinical trial service vendor or CRO, even start your own. For example, the CRO business focuses on what we call clinical trial as a CRO company. So that's a very different entrepreneurship track versus that you be the head of the clinical research or clinical operation that's within a larger or mid-sized and larger biopharmaceutical company. You prepare for this career overseas advancement. Now, number one, as I mentioned, you need to have a strong science background. That's actually what gave you an advantage, because clinical research, basically, it's a scientific experiment. We just conduct in human. Okay, so you need to have a good understanding about the science. The second is that you will need to gain that clinical trial, the knowledge and the background. This includes that the clinical research itself, how to design the proper clinical trial, how to manage the clinical trial, plus the regulatory information. We typically talk about FDA, the GCP regulation, and also the ICH. So these, the regulatory, that's the guidance, information, is that essential knowledge you need to have. Now, on top of that, you also need to have the project management, the business skill, the interpersonal, that's communication skill to build up in order to be a very effective, very excellent clinical research project manager. So that's, I think it's, but ultimately, I think it's come back to very, very important question is that when you consider the career path change, number one, ask yourself, is this something really inspire you? Is, what you interested about? Number two, ask yourself, is this something you are good at? If you are really interested about the field and you are good about it, and then the number three, I would say, look at the big picture of our times. That is it some of the big trends that the industry are moving? Then it will going to help you to make the decision which career path you want to take.
Okay. Thanks, Jane. I hope that answered question from Lu Huang. Feel free to reach out if through the WeChat group if you have more questions. We're actually out of time. Let me just check. I found another one question. Okay, it's not a question because it's already built the chat. Okay, so one question from Bing Sun. He just entered to be a role of lab manager in the team of 4 people with different ethnicity. I had been in the team for 3 years before this promotion. Are there any tips for me on the new management role? Who want to take this question? Let's wrap here after I finish this question.
Ron, maybe I'll give a try on this. So congratulations, first of all. That's the first step to get to the management letter. I will answer trying to be concisely. The SAPA, we are working on to organize another career development workshop. We call it a masterclass on July 31st. Over there, we're going to have a couple of really nice speakers to address exactly what you ask. So maybe I will give you a teaser. We can join over that. So connect with SAPA to learn more. Look at the website. We're going to be, share with you more. Not only that, but for people in general, how to be moving into the next leadership position. So we're going to be focusing on leadership specifically. Thank you, Ron.
And then maybe just one sentence of advice is that you need to keep arm's length with your former colleagues because you used to be co-workers with them and now you're managing them. It's a very tricky situation. And people may be jealous. That's just human nature. So you don't want to be as, buddies or as close to them as before.
Yeah, just maybe I want to share one more thing. So we'll keep, other than what Wayne's saying, I agree with that, is make sure you change your mindset, right? So people report to you as a manager. Don't think that they are your slave. Don't become a slave driver. There's a very big difference between the manager and the director, and the leader. So what I learned the most is one time, one of the interview time, I said, a few people works for me, and the interviewer told me right there, said, stop. People don't work for you. People work with you. One single word, I'll send that to you, the new manager. Think of the people work with you, not for you. You're going to go very far. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Great saying, John. Yeah, it's easier to be a manager, but how to be a leader, make people really following you. That's a task. That's a skill set. Okay. I missed one question from Dr. HY. In the context of no face-to-face interaction during the pandemic, as well as the cultural difference, what's your advice to junior co-workers to take initiative to really build the trust with the senior leaders and to deal with the conflict effectively? Anyone want to share some thoughts?
You can mute.
Just feel free to unmute yourself when you if you want to speak.
Yeah, Ron, I think I took the chime a few words here. I used to manage a very large team, and then there are different levels of position from director down to the analyst with only probably 5 years working experience. I like John just said, no matter if that you own the company or you are the senior leader with the company, you should treat people equally. When I see that is regardless of their position and then their experience and the age, the difference, you have to see them that they have their unique talent. A good leader is that is not trying to compete with your team member, that you show them you are smarter than them. A good leader or good manager is actually like a row of the string that make the beautiful pearl. Your team members are individual pearl, and you have to actually to gel them together, make the beautiful pearl, and that's your company. And so you can achieve the business success. So that's the number one. If you respect your junior workers because you hire them, they have the certain talent and they make the contribution to you, you're going to leverage those talents, provide them the opportunity so they can actually strengthen the talents and strengths, and then trust them. But when you trust them, do not lose the oversight. Give them a direction, but also give them opportunity to grow and then be creative, and then the trust. I think that you can help to build a very healthy culture with your team. So I just have this simple message for you guys.
Thank you, Jane. I thought it was with a raising hand from John. Good. So back to the question. The question from Dr. H.Y. Charles, do you have any thoughts on this?
Okay, as a marketing person, a sales person, and the pandemic limits my lifestyle. I used to travel every week, and then now I have lost the opportunities to face-to-face meeting with people. So I think some of good things that people is as boring as you, they're at home. So pick up your phone, you can call them, and arrange some of the happy hours on a Zoom meeting that can compensate part of it. And the most important thing is that people didn't realize that the social media is so powerful, and you kind of like them, and you kind of ask them to like you, and you engage with their posting. That's go a very long way. And I think I get most popular by doing that. And that's compensate a lot of losing business opportunity. I don't have to call them for business. They sometimes remember me, and I'm always on the top of their head. And if they think about the clinical trial, call Charles, do you know this? Do you know that? And I'll spot a lot of opportunity beyond that. So that keep my working still flowing, and without much effect by the pandemic. I think people, the communication can be a modern channel, and you have to do it in different ways. That's my takeaways for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and add to that, just based on my own experiences right now, being a junior co-worker in the big organization, how to build up the trust and connection with the senior leaders. Just take initiative, set up a quarterly or bi-monthly catch up with the senior leaders, just chat about things and what you have been doing, what's on your mind. I think just like with this ongoing communication, the senior leaders, they know what's going on top of your mind, and because they want you to work happy here, so they'll try to help you and provide resource that you want. Okay.
Yeah, Ron,
great. I think and I hope that's helpful. I think we answered all the questions. So I think we can conclude here. Thank you all. Great. Thank you all for your time today. Special thanks to the speakers and sponsors who have contributed that time to make this forum a place for great discussion. I personally also want to thank all the SAPA-DC volunteers behind the scene, Wang Chen, who's right now on vacation, and De Yi, and Mia, Victor Liang, just to name a few, who have spent the past 2 months working on making this event possible. So with that being said, this is the end of the event, and we look forward to seeing you all next year. Thank you.
And hopefully in person.
Yes.
Thanks, everybody.